It's Friday and we are live. What's up, guys? Welcome to the FreshandFit podcast. We're here with a full panel of really intelligent individuals, man. We got a high IQ conversation coming in. Let's get into it, baby.
Let's go.
We're back, guys. What's up? Welcome to the FreshandFit podcast, man. It's Friday, aka normally a call-in show, but we got a huge panel show for y'all tonight, man. I'm really excited for this. Quick announcement before we get into the show. Patreon.com/FreshFit. We're gonna have a Zoom call this weekend. Check us out on Spotify, Google, and Apple Podcasts. Get the merch at FreshandFitPodcastStore.com. Go subscribe to our other YouTube channel, FreshandFit Clips. We're gonna start posting clips only on that channel, guys. Starting next week, there will no longer be clips on this channel. It's gonna be all on FreshandFit Clips. So go check us out over there. This channel is only gonna be for the podcast, all right, or the historical clip/shorts. And then also, Fresh, you want to tell them real quick about your vlog channel?
Guys, man, check out the vlog channel. We do live streams, lifestyle videos as well. And also as well, guys, 100K on the way. BBC Gang is no more. It's only CEO Gang. Shout out to y'all, man. Let's get it.
All right. And then also, guys, you can check out my YouTube channel, Fed1811, under our breakdown criminal cases for you guys. From my former life, I did a breakdown of the Pablo Escobar drug trafficking sellout in New York City. Then also did Vibes Cartel. This weekend, I'm going to figure out a case to do for y'all. And then I'll also do the Hansen spy espionage case, the FBI agent that sold the secrets to Russia. So, yeah, man, go check that other YouTube channel out, Fed1811, if you guys want something a little different. But without further ado, man, we got a bunch of special people on the panel today. I guess we can go through and have everyone introduce themselves real quick, and then we'll kind of talk about the topic at hand. So we can start right here with Miguel.
Yeah, what's up, guys? My name is Miguel, Dollar Cost Crypto.
Hexican.
Hex Jesus.
Oh, God.
And my man to my left is...
Jay Waller, Justin Waller. I have a YouTube, Jay Waller 7 on Instagram, and Jay Waller on YouTube.
International man of mystery.
Cowboy.
Yes. Cowboy up.
So George Gammon, most people know me from my YouTube channel when I do whiteboard videos and the Rebel Capitalist show, Rebel Capitalist Live.
Awesome.
All right.
And I am Rollo Tomasi, the most hated man in the Tradconosphere.
There you go, my friend.
That's all I've been doing this week. You know
man. No, man, awesome. I'm really happy to have this this panel here, guys. So George hit me up the other day. I was like, hey, I'm going to be in town. You know, let's make a show happen. Anytime George is in town, I'm like, yeah, fuck yeah, let's make it happen, because I learn a lot every time he's on the panel, so I'm really happy to have you here. And then obviously Justin is here in Miami for once, and Rollo was in town, and Miguel was too. So I was like, fuck it, let's have a great panel show with y'all.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about, we're officially in a recession, guys.
It was a big week in the news.
Yes.
As far as the economic news, huge.
Yeah, you want to give the people a quick little
Yeah,
It was a
what's going on?
transition, not a recession.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Give
thought we
the people a
changed the
quick little
definition.
rundown of what's
Well,
going on.
first, the Fed raised rates by 75 basis points.
Yep.
So the big news there, in my opinion, is they raised rates by that much, and the 10-year Treasury actually went down. So the yield curve inverted even farther, and it's not just the 1 year and the 2 year inversion with the 10-year, but it's also the 6-month Treasury. Now the yield is about 20 basis points higher than the 10-year. So I won't go too far into the weeds, but that is a big deal, and that's basically the Treasury yield curve screaming that there's going to not only be a recession, but a very significant recession. So then on Thursday, well, we back up, and the White House came out on, I believe, the 21st.
Yeah.
Because they probably got the information that we're going to have 2 consecutive quarters of negative real GDP, which technically would be the definition of a recession.
Mm-hmm.
So they came out on their blog and said, well, we're kind of redefining what a recession is. They say most people think that it's 2 consecutive quarters of negative real GDP, but that's not really it. No. There's more to it than that. You know, you dumb rubes in the real economy just with those simpleton, types of definitions, but it's far more complex. So you have to incorporate the unemployment rate and all these things. So basically they're kind of front running this because they knew what would happen on Thursday. And sure enough, we got the numbers, and it's 2 consecutive quarters of negative real GDP. So this, prior to their redefining what a recession is, would be, really bad news. That's an economic contraction.
Yeah.
And that means the economy is actually shrinking.
Yeah.
And while at the same time, we have the CPI, which is the rate of consumer price inflation that the government will admit to at 9.1%. So what this does is you have real wages going down. So a lot of people, a lot of your viewers, I'm sure on the live stream right now, maybe they've gotten a raise increase or a wage increase since, let's say, 2021.
Yeah.
But maybe it's 5%. But the problem there is that their expenses are going up by 10, 15% per year. So in real terms, their incomes are actually going down.
Yeah.
Their purchasing power is decreasing. And we're starting to see this in the GDP numbers because people are spending less money, less aggregate demand. And it's just going to be this, in my opinion, it's going to be a downward cycle until the Federal Reserve or the government comes out with another round of stimulus or, quote unquote, money printing that takes us back probably to another wave of extremely high inflation. So I was just at Precious Metals conference today where we were discussing this at great length. So we can go into that a little bit later on.
Awesome.
But the economy has big problems right now.
Okay.
But George, isn't it even worse than that? Isn't it even worse than 9? Isn't that kind of
so that's why
number?
because that's why I said that's what the government admits to. So that's headline CPI, but in reality, it's probably 15%.
Double.
And two, what I've been calling it on my whiteboard videos is deflationary inflation. And what I mean by that oxymoron is that the stuff that you need is going way up in price. So gas, food, shelter. Where the stuff you don't really need, like clothes at Macy's, that's going down because of what they call the bullwhip effect. So what happened is the government gave all these stimmy checks, so that increases aggregate demand. So everyone goes to Macy's or Target or Walmart, and they just, once the lockdowns are over, and they just buy because they had all this pent up demand, and plus they had all this quote unquote free money from the government. So the people at Macy's that are doing the ordering, as an example, they're not economists, and they don't watch my YouTube channel, unfortunately. so they think that this level of demand is just sustainable. Oh, this is the comeback. It's going to be like this forever. So I better buy more and more and more inventory, right? So then what happens? They buy all this inventory, and then the demand goes down because it was just a sugar rush from the stimmy checks in the first place.
Exactly.
And then they have to fire sell everything, which cuts into their profits, which is why you see an earnings recession right now on a lot of the companies in the S&P 500.
Wow. Wouldn't you say that those individuals that went and spent that money from the stimmy checks also don't watch your videos and are the ones that are going to get benefited, like hurt the most by this?
Absolutely. So let's go through this because I did a whiteboard the other day and I showed a chart of the average checking account for different income brackets in the United States compared to 2019.
Okay.
Is absolutely fascinating. So as an example, the lower 25% income bracket, their checking account went up by over 150%. And you see it skyrocket every
When you
single
say the lower 25%, we're talking about people that make less than 30K per year?
I don't know what they had,
their income,
the lower, the two middle 25, and then the top 25%. So I would guess it's probably
somewhere in that
30,
range.
something like that.
Okay.
Yeah,
So their average checking account balance went up like 150%.
Wow.
Based relative to where it was in 2019, every single time they got a stimmy check.
Okay.
And then as soon as that stimmy check gets spent, you see it just plummet all the way down, but it never goes back down to where it was because you got to factor in all the expenses that they don't have. Remember the mortgage forbearance?
Yeah.
Where they didn't have to pay their rent.
They have to pay their rent for a while.
They have to pay their mortgage. And to this day, they still don't have to pay back their student loan. I didn't even know that until I did the research for my whiteboard video.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's not due until September. Oddly enough, is when the elections are. So what do you think the politicians are going to do?
Perfect
Seriously.
timing.
Exactly.
Yeah, so what do you think the politicians are going to do? But so what's happened is you give people all this quote unquote free money and then you reduce their expenses. So they have all this artificial purchasing power. Right. But if you look at their checking balances today, they're still higher than they were in 2019. But that's very temporary because the example I use just to make the math easy on my whiteboard video is I said, say you start with $100.
Yeah.
And today, let's say you have $150.
Okay.
So your checking account balance is 50% higher.
Yeah.
But the problem there is you've had 2 or 3 years of high inflation. So you can't buy as much stuff with your $150 as you can with your 100. So what that's going to do is that's going to, and since your real income has gone down, right? Because you only got a 5% raise inflation's at 10-15%.
Yeah.
So then you're going to spend down that 150 a lot faster.
Yeah.
Buying the gas and the shelter and the food that you need that's gone up in price. So what's going to happen is where you started with $100 and you just had that in there every single month. Now it's going to rapidly go from 150 down to 50 down to 0.
Yeah.
And to your point, you're going to be far worse off, the average Joe, than when you got the stimmy check in the first place. That's what people don't understand.
Yeah.
Whenever they get, and that's why I always say, quote unquote, free money.
Yeah.
Right.
Because they think, oh, well, this is fantastic. I'm just getting all these, checks for $2,000 or child tax credits and all these things. But what they don't understand is over the long run, in 2-3 years,
Yeah.
you're going to be far worse off.
Yeah.
And we're seeing that come to fruition right now.
Yep.
And we're seeing it play out in the GDP numbers.
Yeah.
Wow.
We're basically paying for what happened back in like 2020, essentially right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah, but it's going to be worse.
Yeah.
So it's not something where it's just, okay, I'll give you $100 today. You give it back to me in 2 years. So on net balance, you're in the same place.
Right.
No, it's I give you 100 today and you pay me back 200
Mm.
in 2 years.
Yeah.
So you increase the money
in-
supply.
In aggregate total, you're worse off. Well, you increase the money supply, but you decrease the goods and services.
Right.
So remember
Yeah.
our first conversation that
Yeah.
we had when I was on the show, I told you guys my definition of wealth.
Mhm.
Remember, and it's not dollars, it's not Bitcoin, it's not gold. What it is goods and services.
Services.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because it's the example I always use. If you're on a deserted island and you have a chest full of $1 billion, are you rich or are you poor? You're poor.
Yeah.
Because there's no stuff.
Yeah.
Right. And it's the same thing now. What we've done is we've given people quote unquote money because we think that's wealth. We think that's purchasing power. But at the end of the day, it's not. It's the
Yeah.
goods and services. And then we lock everyone in a cage
Yeah.
for a year.
Mhm.
And now we're shocked because we destroyed all the supply chains.
Yep.
And now we
Mm.
can't get as much stuff. The price of what is there goes up. We have shortages and people's standard of living goes down
Yeah.
in aggregate total.
And I think it's very important to note, like the CPI, which for those of you that are wondering, and correct me if I'm wrong here, is essentially the prices, the price of goods that are essential, your food, your gas, that type of thing, right? That going up.
Well, the CPI technically is a basket of almost everything that you buy. It's supposed to represent
Essentials, right? Like things that
yeah,
people,
and then they give it weighting, like housing is like 33%, but it's not the price of a house, or it's not really rent. They call it owner's equivalent rent, which
okay.
is just a complete BS number that they kind of just
Yeah.
pull out of thin air, But so there's a lot of stuff in there.
Yeah.
And then they use hedonics as well, which is another, and substitution, which is, okay, I'll go over it real quick. So what they do is, let's just say that steak goes from $10 a pound or whatever to $15.
Oh, they roll that into there too.
Right, but listen to this. This is really going to blow your mind. So what they'll do is they'll say, okay, well, steak went up by $5,
Mhm.
but beef, you can still buy hamburger for $10. So if you can buy hamburger, then it's still kind of from a cow. So we're just going to say that the prices didn't go up at all.
So substitution.
Yeah, this is one of the things that they do to
Wow.
come up with that 9.1 number. So that's why when
Oh,
Justin was saying, hey, that number's bogus, absolutely it's bogus. You
Okay.
almost have to
They-
double it, really.
They say
Wow.
there's more lies told in an Excel spreadsheet than anywhere else in the world.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah,
Hey, I got a
that's a good
question.
point. Yeah.
Now, you've said on the show before that what was it, like 40% of the dollars that have been printed in the last, like, what years
Yeah,
are
yeah.
circulating in the economy right now, or
Yeah.
printed in the last year?
Yeah, like in the last couple of years.
Is this a result of that, or were there conditions prior to that that also led into this? So it's like the perfect storm.
Well, that's a tough question. So one of the reasons why there were so many dollars that got onto the balance sheet of the average Joe and Jane, will say, and that's why you took M2 money supply, which is probably what you're referring to.
Yeah.
And it went up by about 25% in 2020.
Mhm.
They could do that because of quantitative easing, because of a few things. But the main reason is because the government came out and deficit spent.
Mhm.
And where they spent the money was just direct transfer payments to the people that spend it, that have
Stimmy checks.
a propensity to
Mhm.
spend.
PPP.
Therefore, those dollars are going to go and circulate in the economy with a high degree of velocity.
Mhm.
But the big problem there, and why we saw such huge inflation, is at the same time they increased demand and increased velocity.
Mhm.
They decreased the goods and services.
Mhm.
You see, if you have the money supply go up and the amount of goods and services goes up at the same rate,
Mhm.
you're not going to see consumer price inflation. See, the problem is they did both. They
yeah.
increased demand and decreased supply, and now they're making it even worse.
Right.
Because so what's Biden and all these politicians coming out and saying to help with inflation? And in fact, he came out the other day and introduced his Inflation Reduction Act. which, okay, you're like, okay, what's the government going to do to decrease inflation?
Hmm.
Well, they're proposing a bill or an act where they spend another $400 billion. So,
Save the Ukraine.
show me. So let's think about this. The way you bring down prices is you decrease demand and increase supply.
Right.
So what they're doing is the exact opposite. They're spending more money, increasing demand, and then decreasing supply by trying to increase taxes on the people that are producing the stuff. So I mean, it's just a complete bizarro world.
Wow.
So George, just in your opinion, is the Great Reset real? How can we like prepare for it?
Well, that's a very difficult. Yes, I think it is. And you just go to the World Economic Forum's website, and it's just right there. You know, it's the Great Reset agenda that they are trying to implement by 2030, and it's just their vision of the world, where they talk about this private-public partnership, which is nothing but just global fascism. That's really what it, from an economic standpoint.
Okay.
And when I mean fascism, I mean when the government really doesn't control or doesn't own the means of production, that corporations control the means of production, but the government influences them to such a degree that the government might as well own the means of production. That's what I'm talking about. So you've got all these mega corporations, like Salesforce is a great example, and or Facebook, something like that, and they own all of these businesses, right? And then people own shares. But you've got Klaus and BlackRock and Larry Fink and all these Davos types. They influence the CEOs to such a degree that they might as well own the mega corporations. And you'll notice, let's go back to the lockdowns, right? What did they do with mom and pop business? Is they said, well, you're non-essential, Walter. You know, you own that dry cleaner on the corner. Well, you're non-essential. But Amazon, the mega corporation, where Jeff Bezos is part of the Davos crowd,
Essential.
obviously essential. So what you're doing is you're taking all of this demand and all this revenue that would go to 1 million different small businesses and mid-sized businesses, and you're consolidating it to 4 or 5 of these mega corporations, right? And so if you're the global elite, and if you're trying to achieve this great reset agenda, where you're trying to usurp power, control, wealth, is it easier to control 5 CEOs or 1 million or 500 million of these small businesses?
5, yeah.
You see, and this is why I think one of the things that they'll push in the future is climate change lockdowns. So I'm not here to debate whether climate change is real or anything, but what I am here to tell you and your audience is that the global elite don't care about the temperature in the ocean. I can tell you that right now.
100%, bro. They don't care at all.
Private jets,
Not at
baby.
all. Not at all.
The boat and the ocean.
They're
Yes,
just
sir.
using
The
that.
have-yachts and the have-nots.
And I think that they'll take, I have a presentation that I do at some conferences that I call "Never Let a Crisis Go to Waste." Right? That quote from Rahm Emanuel. And I think this is how the global elite see like the COVID crisis. Well, let's try to push lockdowns because we're conditioning them to accept lockdowns if we want to implement them for XYZ reason in the future to help us achieve maybe this great reset agenda. You see, so I'm not saying that this is what's going on. I haven't personally talked to Klaus.
Yeah.
I'd love to get him on my show. I'd love to get him on the Fresh and Fit show.
Yeah.
We'll get him on here
After hours
live.
with Klaus.
Yeah, but if you look at the incentive structure, that you can't ignore.
But you're right, though. There's a quote that says, chaos comes to order. So on some level, that's true.
Yeah, and I think I've done a lot of research on this, and it gets very kind of hard to get your head around everything they say because you can't nail them down. They don't give you any details. They just give you platitudes. But in all the research that I've done in looking at Klaus's book and their videos and what they say on their website, you can break their objectives down to 3 main things. Number 1, they want to reduce the usage of energy globally. They want to reduce energy use. Okay. So then you look at that through the lens of what's happening in Europe right now in Russia. You kind of scratch your head and say, wait a minute here. So the Germans now are being conditioned to where they're not going to have energy this winter.
Yeah.
I don't want to put on the tinfoil hat, but it's interesting that that's the number 1 objective of
waiting for it.
kind of the Great Reset agenda in the global elite. The number 2 is they want to decrease they say they want to decrease the birth rate. Not that they
Population.
say explicitly, but yeah, I mean, they want to decrease the population.
Shout out to Bill Gates.
Shout out
And then-
feminism.
Yeah, I mean, they'll come out and say this explicitly. Don't take my word on it. Just watch their YouTube videos.
Yeah.
And then third, they just want to usurp power, control, and
Control.
wealth. And that if you can just break it down into that little framework and look at everything that they do and everything that they're saying in the news, it all makes a lot more sense.
George.
Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Justin. And
I
then
was-
I'll read the chats after this.
Yeah,
Guys,
chats.
real quick. I'm gonna probably only read 50 and up from this point forward, just because I don't want to interrupt the conversation. We got a lot to talk about.
Yeah.
So but go ahead, Justin, and then I'll read after. Go ahead.
So my question for you is why not nuclear?
Well, from their standpoint or from my standpoint?
Both.
Well, from my standpoint, I think it's a great solution.
Right. Exactly. So why not?
Yeah. Well, to give them a little credit here, on their website, they have talked about some of the benefits of nuclear energy. And if you look at the EU, they just came out and they put nuclear into a category of quote unquote green energy. So I think that could be a huge investment opportunity in the future, because right now uranium, relatively, if you look at a historic chart adjusted for inflation, it's pretty cheap.
Mhm.
So if you could buy uranium right now through a uranium trust, I know Sprott's got one, that could be a way to play the Great Reset agenda. If you want to go long, kind of the insanity of the politicians, because I think there's going to be less and less and less capital going into fossil fuels.
Yeah.
But this is going to create a massive
Supply shock, right?
not just a supply shock, but it's going to cause an energy crisis.
Right.
Really, nothing less than a crisis. Because if your audience really thinks about how inelastic demand is for fossil fuels, this cup could not be made without
Yeah.
fossil fuels. Chemicals can't be made. Fertilizer can't be made
Yep.
without fossil fuels.
Which is a big problem.
Yeah.
That's a big problem. Yeah, that's a big problem. In fact, they have a saying that you go from the right in the middle of a good economy and starvation is riot.
Mm.
I think that's the way people have to think through a potential food shortage.
Yeah.
Right. That means social unrest. That means the pitchforks and the torches out in the streets. That's a bad situation.
Yeah. Shout out to the farmers' banks in China.
Yeah.
60 billion seized.
Mhm.
Yeah, and that's another thing. If you look at the Dutch farmers,
Yep.
that's coming down straight from the World Economic Forum, and they're not going to stop there. They're going to continue to try to push that unless we, the people, fight back and push back and show them that this is totally unacceptable. That's the good news, is that there's a lot more of us than there is of them.
Right.
And if you look at world history, you see that even if they control the guns, even if they control the military, even if they control all of the, whatever type of power you want to attach to them, at the end of the day, the people, if they stand together, they will always win.
Yep.
And a great example of that is when the Soviet Union came down, right? I used the example of Romania, and I forgot the guy's name, but they had this guy that had been a dictator there for like 20
Yeah,
years.
they killed his ass.
Okay, 9
I was just
days
at
later,
that building like 3 weeks
9
ago.
days later.
You know that's the heaviest building in the world.
I didn't know that, but
Yeah.
I saw they've got the YouTube videos on there. And what happened is the Romanians saw all these other countries on the perimeter of Russia getting their freedom.
Right.
So they said, we want the same thing. So they went out to protest. It starts with 10 people, then 100 people, then 10,000. And then the guy goes out there with the military and just starts shooting people, because that's what he had done in the past to really squash any type of uprising. But this time it was different, in the sense that the more people he went out there and shot, the more people came out to protest. And it got to a point where there was like 500,000 people in the square, protesting, and he came out to address them. And in the past, when he would raise his hand, everyone would shut up because they knew if they didn't, that one of the police would shoot him. But this time, every time he raised his hand, they got louder and louder and louder. And he went from being a dictator with complete control over the entire country, the military, the guns, the power, the money, you name it. 9 days later, like you said, they took him out back and shot him. Done.
Wow.
So,
Praise
I'm
Jesus.
not condoning violence in any way, shape, or form, but I'm just using that as a story to illustrate the power that we have. All of us, everyone on this live stream,
Yeah.
if we get sick and tired enough of the global elite and of the central planners and authoritarians, if we stand up, we will win.
Okay. Shit. All
Hell
right. Real quick, I'll hit these chats real quick. We've got almost 4,000 y'all in here, man. So go ahead and like the video, because you guys just got a bunch of education in the past 24 minutes.
Yep.
Chris, do we have them up? Okay, I'm gonna run through these because these came in earlier, guys. But then from this point forward, we're only gonna read 50 and up. However, every single chat that comes in will be shown on screen, so we appreciate all the support, guys. But we want to make sure that you guys get all this sauce because we got a really great panel today, and I want to minimize interruptions. What is the biggest wealth transfer, crypto or divorce? Transfer of the house, pension, savings, investments, future outlines, ex-wife, and Pookie. That's where marriage causes divorce. Funny. And then $5 again from him. He goes, if you're married, it's not your crypto, it's really hers. The blue pill divorce jokes will give it to 50%.
It's coming.
And he
It's
goes,
coming.
MGTOW, men guarding their own wallets. Okay, I like that one. DC, please tell me ETH is going to drop back down to 900.
Yes.
Okay, boom. Miguel's telling you. The interview with Jay Baller and Myron was pure gold. Fantastic stuff. Every time I hear Jay Baller speak, I zone in with full attention because this man speaks in diamonds, crystals, and emeralds, and that's from Leon VRP. Okay, awesome. Holden Ebedini, panel of G's tonight. George, loved your 3 reasons video 2 days ago. Lots of good laughs from that. Shout out to Justin, Miguel, Rolo, and the whole FNF squad. Like the damn video. Yes, guys, like the video. Salis. I'm sorry, Rolo. I couldn't watch the whole show with Jedediah. It was a headache. She kept interrupting you. You have anything else?
Your ass, man.
Hey, go watch the clips. There's millions of them now on her channel.
Are there? Okay.
She was on your ass, bro.
Yeah, she
yeah, it was very profitable for her. Let's just say, like, for the 30-second soundbite clips.
Shout out to the view.
But I like that better than the Ruslan interview.
She's a typical feminist that doesn't argue on logic, just feelings. For $5, Derek Mitchell. Myron, we need a Fed it for Kenneth Petty attempted grape case. I don't know who that is, but okay. $10 from Liam VRP. I should have been a cowboy. I should have learned to rope and ride. Okay.
Okay, Justin.
Tyrone H.
Okay, Justin.
Okay, now I can actually see. Okay, what's your small island investment perspective, Tyrone H?
No,
okay.
bro, stop it. That's the guy from last time.
Yeah,
He's like, I'm gonna buy island, donating $2. I'm like, bro, how is this possible? $2? Bro, stop it. Stop it, bro.
Cameron O'Weir, $10. Thank you so much. $10 from Dax Hill. In Austin, Texas, eggs went from $3.30 to $9.60.
Wow.
Steak per pound went from around 14 to 24. Yep, it's happening. Michael James Campanoli. Are we going down more or not? Okay. And then we got shout out to FNF. This is from Retro Assassin. He goes, shout FNF and everyone on the panel. Question: what are some of the books are good for starting a profitable business in this recession? Tired of being poor. Keep grinding, boys. Don't worry. Just keep watching the show. Girlfriend and I've been living together for 1 year, and she's been cheating on. She has since moved out. I'm a 22-year-old, and I don't know what to do. Go get another bitch, more brother.
Reject.
Yeah.
Kwasi goes, Fresh and Phil, what's up? George, Jay, Rolo, and Migs. Much love to all y'all. Glad y'all are here. Also, FNF are not y'all not jacking the Shorts channel no more. No. We put on clips, so check out the clips channel. Everything's gonna go on the clips channel. Evening, guys. Why Ethereum skyrockets in the bear market rally, almost 70% up, and that's from Douglas Ferreira. You want to give a quick answer to that?
Dovish.
Short-term rally.
Okay.
Dovish because the Fed's dovish. I think risk assets up. Yeah.
Yep.
Last thoughts, $10 goes. George, thoughts on potential World War III in the next 5 years? If China invades Taiwan, then the U.S. has to step in to defend. If Russia, U.S., and China are in a war, then we are in World War III. Thoughts, don't worry. We'll discuss that in a second because that will come into play.
Okay.
JBX, what do you guys think is the bare minimum a person needs to earn per year to survive in the next few years in this inflation?
George brought up a very good point about that earlier.
Oh, what was
we can
that?
tackle after.
We'll get to that. We'll get to that.
We'll get into that. Michael Mistro, $2, thank you. And then $10, Life Matters. Off topic, but thoughts on Ethan Klein saying he wouldn't want to debate y'all because of monkeypox.
Wow.
The fuck? I didn't even know. He's making excuses all over the place.
So first it was COVID, and now it's monkeypox.
I'm a family. All right, bro. We all have families here.
Okay, Wayne, $50. Can you imagine a conspiracy theorist trying to top what is actually happening before our eyes? Okay. Sandizi, shooting my shot here. Met you at the bank today, Fresh, and was wondering what's the move after the after-hour show. Heard you're feeling generous and want to show your boy around the club scene. Huge ride or die fan since day one CEO gang. What the fuck?
Send me a DM, bro. But yeah, I met him at Wells Fargo Bank. He was just like, bro, what's up, man? I was like, what's up, dude?
Oh, I thought it was a girl for a second. I was like,
it's a dude. Shout out to you, bro.
Pause.
Yeah, pause, man. Pause.
Okay. Mike Sinatra. Hey, guys, I have a 5-figure Amazon FBA business online arbitrage I started 5 months ago. With inflation going on, is it smart for me to stay in it or should I change the venture? Keep watching the show, my friend. We're going to talk about that. George Arkella, last two here, goes, even given the climate change issue, it would seem large corporate commercial real estate is the largest share of energy consumption, which influence the pollution issue. But large corps siding with WEF want to be exempted from paying the cost. All right, we'll get into that as well. That's from George Okello. And then the last one here, Offie121 all the way from Brazil. For your knowledge, gentlemen, nuclear waste is non-recyclable. Most of the waste storage of former nuclear fuel nuclear rods are kept in non-habitant North Russia. The amount is constantly rising. All right, cool. So for some of you guys that are just joining the stream, go ahead and like the video, number one, okay? We got about 4,000 y'all in here. From this point forward, we're going to read 50 and up, guys. Thank you so much for the donations. Every single donation will be shown on screen, but we're only going to read 50 and up because I want to make sure that you guys get all this sauce with this awesome panel. We got a crypto expert in the house. We got someone that knows the economy. We got real estate investors in the commercial world with steel. We got Rolo Tomasi in the house.
Yep.
Intersection dynamics. So we're going to talk about pretty much us being in a recession and how it's going to affect all different facets of your life.
Now, right before the show, George brought a very good point regarding our last show we did with the girls, right?
Yeah.
Do you mind bringing that up one more time, George? Oh, everyone here live?
Yeah, I was actually at the gym just and your show was there, so I clicked it just to check out what you guys were talking about.
Thank you, brother.
And you guys had a panel of the gals like you typically do. And then you had the one gal volunteer to try to play the guy role. And then you guys played the girl role. I think you're standing right over here. And what was interesting is she just couldn't get that either. It took her like a half hour to explain it.
Yeah.
To her, but anyway, once she got it, what was funny is you guys started off the live stream by asking the gals what the minimum would be that a guy would have to make annually in order for the girl to be consider him
as an
date
option.
long-term.
Right.
Yeah, an option. And most of the gals said about 100 grand. That would be their minimum. I think one gal said 500 or $1 million, but most of them said 100 grand. So then this gal comes up and tries to pick you guys up as though you're the girls and she's the guy. And the scene was you guys were at a very fancy restaurant here locally.
Shout out to Sheena.
And you had bought like a $500 bottle of, or no, what she did is she came up and she told the waitress to buy you like a $500 bottle of wine. And then she said, hey, go and pay for their meal. And Myron, you brought up something like, well, okay, that's going to be like $1,500.
Yeah.
And she was like, yeah, well, of course. But the guy, be a man. Like, of course you're gonna. Well, I would pay for that. Like, why not? You just got to man up and pay the bill. That's what you do.
Yeah.
You know, you want to get the ladies, you pay the bill.
Yeah.
And the first thing that came to my mind, I started laughing. I'm like, this is the gal. And I think she was one that said this, that said the minimum amount a guy would need to make to date her is 100 grand a year.
Yeah.
I'm like, how many guys making 100 grand a year can just go out to dinner every single night and throw down $1,500 just paying for everyone's meal, you know, that he finds attractive. Right? It's just totally unrealistic.
Yeah.
And what you pointed out in our conversation before you started recording is the gap or the delta between reality and their view of how the world really works. You know, they see a lifestyle and they think that, they see it on Instagram, or maybe this is, I don't even, you guys would know better than I would. Maybe that they have so many guys hitting them up in their DMs.
Yeah.
That they assume that this type of lifestyle that they live, where all the guys are paying for everything, that can happen on an income of 100 grand a year, but they don't realize, no, that's $1 million a year. And then what you have to do is the math. And this is something we were talking about, how most gals today, at least the ones on your show, I think their issue is a math problem. And not that they can't.
Stupid. Hard.
No, it's not that they can't do math, but what I was referring to is if you've got 100 girls with an expectation level of, let's say, right here, right? The guy that can just come in and drop $1,500 on buying random people dinner, right? That's their expectation. Well, there's only one guy for every 100 girls that meet that.
Right.
So the gals have a decision to make. Either they all need to share that guy, or they need to lower their expectations. And this is where, you know,
George, how dare you say such a thing?
Yeah, but
You can manifest it.
this is where social media, you know, kind of conflicts with reality.
Yeah.
And so I think that's why you get some of these gals that come on here that are so frustrated. And they say, well, where are all the good guys? Where are all the good guys? Where are all the good guys?
Where's my Justin Waller?
Yeah. and it's based on their expectation of what their social media feed.
Yeah.
And it's not based in reality.
Yeah.
And that's where the math just doesn't work.
Yeah. And it's just amazing because even when you explain it to them that there's not enough of these guys to go around, they will sit there and say and insist, I'm going to manifest it. He'll find me. And even if I do find this guy, he's going to take me seriously and be monogamous to me. And it's always incredible to me how women get the luxury of being able to be delusional. Men don't, man.
Yeah.
Men don't. You know, like we got to understand, we know what we measure up as. Like guys typically stay within their realm of like girls that they're attracted to. Women always try to punch above their weight class. Men typically punch below their weight class.
Mhm.
You know, so any thoughts on that, guys, as far as the marketplace goes and everything else?
Oh, I don't feel like women count very much. No, seriously. I think they don't count, and they keep score based off perception because they want to. Girls just want to have fun.
Yeah.
So I think that there is also trouble coming to a lot of men that have outwardly put that perception out. Because one thing I think George would definitely agree to is that we've kind of been in a time where debt is a lot easier to get. And people
interest rates have been so low.
Right.
Yeah.
And so when you talk about like an individual's GDP, their output, their value being important, like I think there's individuals that are living inflationary lives. And so like if you have a shit credit score, but somebody will loan you money and you don't realize that you're probably getting financially fucked, like a credit card that's in the 20%, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you can go on the internet and flex. So that tide rises up, but when it goes down, you're going to get exposed. A lot of dudes are going to get their fucking heart broke over this shit.
Yeah. Speaking of which, we were on your interview yesterday on your show, and you showed me the pictures of the young man who had called in and asked about I forget the guy's name, but he was a good looking guy, and he was going through a breakup or something like that. And he just like, he took care of himself. He was actually looked like somebody who had some sort of like value to him. And he was just, his self-impression was one of like, I'm just a face in the crowd kind of thing. It's like, no, you're not. And I know we use this all the time, like the female delusion calculator on the show all the time. Well, when I'm doing one-on-one counseling right now, and I encounter a guy like that, I said, let's go and put your stats into the female delusion calculator, and let's see where you fit into the population of the United States, right? So we put in like your height, are you obese? Are you fat? Are you in shape? What's your income level? How tall are you? Right? All those things that are in the calculator there. And I say, okay, let's see where you fit into all of this. And for a guy like that, he might fit into like 0.0000126% or something like that. And they don't realize what percentage of the population that they actually represent, and that they don't understand their own like base value. And those are just like simple stats from like
but you know
the
what?
CDC and like the Census Bureau.
But you know what? I would be willing to argue. Let's say he made like 80 grand a year. Even with his looks and how good a Money Muscles game, right? Even with that, and if he made 100 to 90 a year, which he may or may not, he looked like a trainer to me. He's still not good enough for the girl that was on this show last night. Which is actually the problem. In itself, because that guy had fashion, he had looks, he was built, and let's say he makes $80,000 a year, still not good enough.
And he's not dropping $1,500 every single time he goes.
No.
No.
But see, here's the problem, right? There's guys out there, 100%, especially here in Miami, and they're actually doing it every single day. Now, here's the problem, right? If a girl gets a taste of that lifestyle, even one time, just one time, guess what? Her mindset is, you know what? Damn, I got paid for meal, drinks, lit. I had a great time at the party. You know what? I can get this all the time.
It's her new perceived value.
Exactly.
Yeah,
now her
new
standard is
perceived
raised.
average too. That's her new perceived average.
Right.
Like she just assumes that that's
it's
just
apex
a typical
fallacy and like on steroids is what it ends up being. And then here's the downstream effect of this. And I talked about this with Jedediah when I could get a word in edgewise. When we see, like, when we talk about like, should a man cheat, or does a high value man have like, like I hear Tate talk about this all the time. Like, and you as well. It's the idea that like high value men have been defined by three things: resources, territory, and access to, exclusive access to virginic, beautiful, fertile women. Okay. So the downstream effect of that in 2022 is the guys who are the elite level guys are being shared by all these women who say, well, this is what I'm entitled to. So either I have to lower my expectations and lower my standards, or else, or else I have to share this one high value guy with a bunch of other girls and hope to God that I'm going to be able to lock this guy down in the future at some point. And so when we talk about like, well, a high value guy should cheat, or a guy who has the ability to cheat. I've said before, it's that, women want a guy who other men want to be and other women want to get with. And also that, women don't want a guy to cheat, but they love a guy who could cheat. That guy is the guy that is the high value, the elite of the elite that they all feel entitled to. And so you get this sort of soft kind of like low key like polygamy, but it's the women that are inspiring this or incentivizing this for the one guy, and all the rest of the guys are just like, I'm just an average guy. I can't afford like bottle service in Miami. Or
But you know, it's going to get worse too.
Yeah,
Because
it's inflation in the sexual marketplace.
But I can lay over macro on top of what you just said, because let's think this through. Because what your point was fantastic in the sense that you were talking about people consuming more than they produce.
Right.
Because when interest rates are artificially low and money is cheap, and let's say asset prices are going up and up and up, well, people are able to consume more than they produce. I always use the example of a school teacher in California that's making 50 grand a year.
Okay.
Let's say she buys a house in 2012 for 200 grand. She puts down $20,000. Now that house is worth $2 million.
Okay.
Okay, but she's still got the teaching job making 50 a year. So she's not producing any more goods or services. None. Zero. But yet she's a millionaire. Okay, look at how much purchasing power was created just by cheap money.
Yeah.
You see, so your point is when the tide goes out, then you can see who's swimming naked.
Yes.
And right now, if that ratio is one guy that is at the level of the expectations of the 100 women, when we go through a recession, which we most likely will go through in 2022 or 2023, and it gets really bad, and especially if we have a really deep recession, then that one for 100 is going to go down to 1 to 1,000. You see what I'm saying? Because all those guys that could do the bottle service and could do all these things because they're consuming more than they produce because of asset prices artificially going up because of artificially low interest rates. Those guys are gone. And now it's just going to be the guys left that actually produce more than they consume at a level where their incomes are high enough to meet those expectations that have been set by social media.
Hey, and check this out.
Yo, to bring
Like
that
the video
to real life. So Miguel, remember we spoke about you guys that made all the money in crypto, they were blowing money out. You know, the moment crypto went down in the market, where were the guys gone? So these guys were literally every night spending money in the club, getting bottles, getting VIP service, everything like that, right? Getting all the girls, taking girls from this table to that table,
tricking.
You're taking all the girls from the club, right? But what happened was the moment the market went down, they're nowhere to be found. So what happened was the guys that actually had the bread that weren't blowing as much money in the club, they still blew some money, but it wasn't to that extent. And all the girls are going to them. So that's a good point.
That's actually what I was just about to say. Like, if you tie into what he just said into the sexual marketplace, you know how they always say the rich get richer when there's blood in the streets?
Right.
There's about to be blood in the streets.
Yeah.
And so if you ever wanted to start a harem game.
like you?
Like me.
The tide's going out. It's getting sexual
and so of course the rich get richer, but also they can the rich can get richer in the sexual marketplace. And that's exactly what I was going to say to George's point is like that thing at the club that you're talking about.
Yeah.
Man, that's real life. That's real life, man.
But you know, it's funny. Guys that actually have the money, they leverage their network. So, for example, they don't spend 10K every night at the table. No. What they do is they say, you know what? All right, I got money. I already proven my point. You know what? I'm become friends with some of the promoters, the owner of the club, and they come in for free and they get bottles regardless. But guys that don't have any money, any connections at all, they spend like 10, 20K at a table, looking all cool, looking all flyable. Like when the tide comes in, where are they?
Yeah, it's an illusion.
Yeah.
You know, the only table I think I've ever bought was on Andrew's birthday last year.
Yeah. And you could afford a table every night if you wanted to.
If I wanted to every night. But why would I do it on some bimbo?
Bam.
You know what I'm saying? I don't know what it cost me to like jump on a plane real quick and come eat dinner with you.
Yeah.
The other night.
In Reno with me
like, it probably cost me a couple grand, and then the dinner was like what $300 or something. It probably cost me like, I don't know, $2,000. Just do that on a whim. You know, but am I gonna do that on some chick? No, bro, I'm not gonna do that.
And it's funny. It's for the chance to get in the chick. Because they might not get a chick.
Yeah, that's the chance. Maybe you'll get with a chick.
Yeah. So let's go down that path. Because that's another thing we were discussing prior to hitting the record button.
Yeah.
Is how I think cold approach is the term you guys would use. How I think that's exponentially more difficult today than it was prior to social media. So I'm old enough to have gone out a lot in 2006, 2007.
We can tell, George.
But I used to go out quite often there in Scottsdale. Okay. Yeah. And this was, they had Facebook, but social, it really wasn't too big of a thing.
Yeah.
And back then, like we were discussing, the reason people would go out, including the gals, is to meet other people. And if you were a gal back then, think about this: no social media, no I don't know if there was Match.com but there wasn't any Tinder or anything like that, right?
Dating sites were around, but they were frowned upon back then.
Yeah.
I'm old enough to remember too.
Those were the analog years.
Like if you went on
was
like
no-
Match.com
no
or any of these websites, like it was kind of like they would make fun of you. It was still like not a thing yet to use like dating websites to meet women.
Correct.
Good point. Roast you for
So
that.
think about that. If you're a 25-year-old gal, and you're single,
and
let's say you're trying, you're looking for a date or something like that.
Yeah.
How do you find the dude? Like all your people, I'm sure you got a lot of young people watching this, and they probably haven't thought that through.
Yeah.
The only way they could do that, usually, is you meet some guy at work or maybe at school, but you have to meet them in real life.
Yeah.
Yep.
You see? So then they would go out. So if you were cold approaching a gal back then, I think the chances that you would have of getting a number or date were far higher because that was one of their only options to find a date. Where now, in 2022,
only way.
they've got an abundance mindset, to say the least.
Yeah.
Because of Instagram and all of the, I guess you guys call it validation.
Yes.
That they're getting on social media.
Yes.
So they don't have to be receptive to people guys coming up to them and asking them out in real life because it happens so often on in the virtual world and social media.
And I just to add to what you just said, I've always said it that social media has given women an abundance mindset to a fault, and it's hurt men and given them a scarcity mindset to a fault.
Absolutely.
So with the women, right, a guy will come up that meets their requirements or whatever it may be, attractive guy, whatever, but they know that I got 20 guys on my Tinder, another 50 guys on my Instagram DMs, etc. They have this higher perceived sense of self-worth.
Yeah.
So a guy that would have been probably attractive 10, 15 years ago with the advent of social media and dating apps, who would have probably gotten a chance, was probably going to get scrubbed over now, right? Because women have an abundance mindset where it's like, I can always replace and do better, which is why girls overwhelmingly initiate breakups, divorces, etc., especially nowadays. But men, on the other hand, don't get nearly as many options, which is why we have so many guys simping, scarcity mindset, fuck, she's the one. So it's hurting both genders from opposing sides.
I think it actually gets worse too.
Okay, go ahead.
Because we've talked about it from, the gal's perspective.
Yes.
But I think from the guy's perspective, and you can correct me if I'd love your input on this. When we were growing up prior to social media, right? And I had a conversation with Josh, my research assistant, who's about 20 years old, about this on the drive down. I said, when
I think he's still here.
When I was growing up as a kid, when we moved to a new neighborhood, what would you do when you're 10 years old? You would have to get on your bike,
meet all the neighbor kids.
Literally knock on their door and say, hey, my name is George. I just moved to the area. You want to go out and play basketball sometime, or you'd have to go look at a football. You'd have to interject yourself socially. There was no online that didn't exist. So you had to basically develop those social skills.
Live in real time, right, with somebody in front of your face.
Yeah. So I think my point is that with my generation, Generation X, and this might have been the last generation that would maybe fit into this bucket, there was a baseline level of charisma.
Okay.
That you just had because of the way you grew up and just the social interactions that you had in real life, not online.
Yeah.
But now the kids, that are on Instagram from 5 years old or 10 years old, all the way up to when they're 20, 22, and they're, going out there and dating and doing all these things. The guys, they don't have that baseline charisma.
Yeah.
And the social skills that come from
skills.
learning
I
all
was
that.
I was just at this, I won't say the name of the conference, but I was at this place. And I had a few, I get people that come up to me and recognize me from the YouTube channel quite often. And this kid comes up, and real great kid, but he's very socially awkward. Like he's kind of talking to you, but he's looking over here, and he's kind of fidgety, and he can't really get out
On
the
the
words.
spectrum.
He's looking out here, and he was telling me how much he enjoyed your content.
Oh,
and I said, well, that's great because I enjoy it as well. I think Rollo really gets it. That was the bottom line. And he said, well, yeah, but there's a couple things missing. I'm like, okay, well, what do you have in mind? He goes, well, me as an example. He's like, I do well. He's talking about his finances, that he has got a good paying job, maybe 125 a year.
Yeah.
And he's like, and I kind of, but he's doing it in this way that's, I guess, on the spectrum, or whatever you want to call it. And he says, and I work out, I'm in good physical condition. And he says, but I have a very hard time with women. And the first thing I thought to myself, this guy's such a nice guy, but he just lacks self-awareness. He doesn't realize that yes, he's got those components, but he doesn't have that baseline charisma.
Yeah.
And that social
Learned
ability,
social skills. Yeah.
social skills, to where if he did go out on a date, even if he's making 120 a year in good shape, the gals aren't going to give him time of day.
Yeah.
Because he just kind of has that awkward vibe.
Yeah.
And I think that's a result of Generation Z and maybe some of the millennial guys growing up online without developing those skills. And that just makes the whole thing that we're talking about even worse.
Yeah.
To bring it into real time perspective, so I'm always outside the clubs, going to events, meeting people, right? And it's funny because I'll ask questions to people when I meet them, right? Girls, guys, everybody. And it's funny because even in the club itself, right? Before a girl even leaves her house, she's like multiple DMs from guys saying, you know what, come to this club, come to this event.
Right.
And it's like maybe 5 to 10 good options she can choose from. So she might choose one option where, like, this guy's pretty hot, he has a good lifestyle, I'll choose him. She goes to the club, meets him, he's awkward. Oh, this guy's kind of weird. I'm gonna move on.
Right.
Goes to another table, meets another guy. Mind you, they all DM there maybe the same night. So she's going from guy to guy to see who actually who's actually like has personality, but at the same time has a lifestyle. And it's hard to find. Now, just to add to that point as well, regarding girls even making friends, they'll go on Bumble friends as well, and they'll meet girls on Bumble rather than in person.
Yep.
And once again, how girls are very catty, very not very personable. The point is that, like, the character flaws that people would see in person nowadays, like back in the day, they can't see because social media is like the buffer.
It's the
Yeah.
perception.
But then when you get in
Digital
person, it's like
perception.
they have no skills at all to be social. So it's kind of weird.
And I think that's why social proof is so important.
Yeah.
I mean, you were talking the other night about how that's like priority number one. If you had to prioritize everything, social proof is what you would
You
pick.
had to pick one.
Because
Amplifier.
gals are so intuitive. That's one thing that they do extraordinarily well. They're
They're
far
better.
than
They're better
guys.
at communication.
Way better.
I mean,
than we are.
innately better.
They
at
just intuitively pick that up, and they're very risk averse for obvious reasons, right? So if they see you as someone who's being selected by other men and other women, that reduces their risk tremendously. So that's why
affirmation.
Yeah, that social proof, I think, in my 49, 50 years of being on this planet, from all my friends and everything that I've seen going out and dating, I totally agree with you. That would be the priority number one.
Yeah.
That would be the thing that holds the biggest impact.
100%. I mean, you can look at someone like a Dan Blazarian, right? Right. Just as an extreme example, he's not he's not like necessarily a Chad. He's 5'9", has a, big ass beard, whatever. Might not be the most attractive guy ever, but the fact that he has hordes of women with him all the time, right? That shows right then and there, this guy has social proof. You look at Hugh Hefner, not the most attractive guy, but he had a bunch of women with him. I always say, if you have bitches, it's much easier to get more bitches, right? Passive bitch income.
Yeah.
And what it is it's like, because women are not independent thinkers. As much as feminists get mad at me for saying this shit, when it comes to sexual selection and mate selection in general, women are not independent thinkers. Even if you meet a girl and she's head over heels over you and she likes you, she's still going to go ahead and talk with her friends and see what she thinks. I literally was talking with a girl the other night. She wants to come hang out with me, whatever. She had to go and talk with her friends about me first to kind of get an idea of where I stand. And that's just how women are. It's not like if I meet a girl and I like her, I'm not going to go to Fresh and Chris and be like, hey, what do you guys think? And if they say, nah, man, she's ugly or whatever, I'm not going to make my decision based off what they say. I'm just going to do what I want to do because men are independent thinkers, right? We can defend ourselves, etc. It comes from the physicality. But with women, they're not. So they need a cosign a lot of times from either their friends or other women to see where you stand on a social hierarchy basis, and they go from there. But when a girl's able to see you with other women, a lot of the work is done. These bitches verified you, cool. I know what it takes. I know how fickle women are as a woman myself. If they're picking you, that's good enough for me.
You're not dating the woman. You're dating her and her sister and her mom and her friends and everybody on Instagram and everybody in her social circle right there. And I'll tell you that. Hold on one second. The reason for that, you want to say, well, they're not independent thinkers. The reason why is when they're doing mate selection, they have to be very, very particular. Because back in our ancestral past, even if she made the right decision, that's still a life-threatening decision.
Right.
So what she has to do is she has to get the consensus of her girlfriends and the other female members of the tribe to say, is this guy verified? Is this guy really who he says? Because I can't rely 100% on my feminine intuition and all of my own, trying to filter, hypergamous filter, trying to figure out if this guy is really the real deal or he's not. That's why you get shows like The Bachelor, The Bachelorette, Cheaters, all these things that sort of even romance novels, they stimulate that intrigue to see if that guy is actually who he says he is. All the best shows on reality shows like Love Island or whatever the hell it is right now, all of those are determining that guy's quality. And how do women do that? They can't do it on their own, or they don't trust themselves to be a good judge of whether this guy's for real or not. So they have to go and get third-party affirmation and confirmation from their girlfriends and outside sources. So they go, well, if I make the decision to get with this guy and he turns out not to be who he says he is, at least these guys were wrong with me too. So it's not just on me, it's on everybody else who got tricked as well.
Yeah, I know from personal experience when I used to go out during that time frame, you know, we'd get a table or something like that. If I was just with like 2 other guys, you know, I'd have a gal come up every once in a while and just approach you. But if I was there with like 15 people, that I was taking them all out, you know, employees, friends, you know, people I knew, you would have far more gals come up and approach you and approach the table.
Absolutely.
And another thing, in this building where I used to live, I was neighbors with a guy, I won't name his name, but he was a very famous basketball player with, I won't even say the team, but
people that watch the videos know who it is. But go ahead.
But we were good buddies because we both had this particular Lamborghini. You'd probably enjoy it, but
there you go.
Anyway, we parked next to each other, so we're good buddies. So occasionally after the games, we would go out together and we would just get a table as a group. And when I would go out with this gentleman, I mean, you would have just,
night and day.
Oh my gosh, you would have just gals constantly, not just for him, but for you and everyone that you were there with would be approaching the table. And you know, another interesting story that I think you should shed some light on the evolutionary, the hardwiring here, is I would meet gals right when we were out, and they would see other women with this basketball player, and they would one night, let's say it's a Friday night, and they'd say, "Oh, I would never." You know, sleep with that guy. I would never do that. I would never, ever, ever. Oh, look at those girls. They're trashy. They're blah, blah, blah. You know, they're cheapening themselves.
Disqualified.
And I'm not kidding you. The very next Friday night, I would go over to his place for like after hours. And those same girls that said, oh, you know, telling me that those other girls were trashy and that they never do that, were at his apartment. Gotcha, bitch. Going into his room.
Yeah.
And that true story. I mean, I've and so that, you know, that was back in 2007 or so. So now whenever I read your stuff, you know, or Rich's stuff, it all makes so much sense because I've seen it with my own eyes.
It's funny because even promoters nowadays use that same tactic. So for example, they've been in the club, right? Bring multiple girls. Guess what? There's a saying that says BYOG, right? Sorry, BYOB. Bring your own bottle to the club, right? That's kind of like a saying sometimes that people use. But I say BYOG. Bring your own girls, because when you bring your own girls, you get more girls. So for example, let's say I'm in the club, I have a table, I'm a promoter, right? If I'm with 2 dudes, who's coming on my table? Nobody. But I have 5 girls at my table, guess what? Oh wow, other girls are there? What's going on? Who are these people? And what happens is when they see other girls there as an option, you know what? I'm gonna hover around and see if I can get a part of the table too. And then let's say I add in a celebrity. Oh Lord, now somebody is popping.
Pre-selection.
I want to see who's that. Who's that? And it was funny. They might not even know who it is. But just the fact that he has girls around him, they want to find out who it is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right,
I'll tell you, I got invited this past week to judge the Playboy bikini contest with Michael Sartain. In fact, I did his podcast. So, yeah, it was hard. It was hard work. Big shout.
He want to come on the show.
Big shout out to Michael. Yeah, bring him on, bro.
I'm actually going to go down.
He's absolutely an incredible dude. But the point I'm trying to make is he's good friends with Dan Barzarian, and we talked about that. And what I was able to see at that event was it seemed like the prettier the girls that were around Michael, the more pretty girls came around.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's like it was almost like this compounding interest.
Cheat code.
Yeah. Where it's like if you really want to get beautiful women, use beautiful women as bait, and he has absolutely mastered it.
And the thing with Dan Bilzerian, like that people don't get, is that he's smart enough to know that the more girls I have around me, the less work I have to do in the long run.
Absolutely.
Because he even talked about this before, I think in his book or whatever. You know, and shout out to him for understanding intersexual dynamics and knowing that social proof is pretty much one of the strongest components when it comes to being attracted to the opposite gender. The more girls he had, the less work he had to put in. He has said he used to play a game where it's like, okay, I want to smash a girl without saying a word to her. And he was able to do it with a model because he had other girls with him. So, you know, Hugh Hefner did this, you know, obviously, Dan Missouri does this. You look at any guy that's like a playboy, that's like dealing with very, very attractive women, a big component to their game is social proof. It's required when you deal with a certain echelon of women, especially models or women that monetize their beauty. It just comes with the territory.
It is
Michael
been
told
more
me.
easy to manufacture social proof than in
Social
this
media.
age.
Yeah.
Miguel, you were at the club.
That's
What'd you say at the club,
looking
Miguel?
glass half full.
Just gangs of tables of just gangs of tables of women of tiers of men with the women right there. They would put the women, the guys would be at the top there. They would put the women in a circle, and then from there they would have their guys at the bottom there feeding more girls to the top. The best girls. So it was just a feeding circle. So you would have like a line of girls to bring in more girls.
We used to have a rope. We'd go. We'd go to the table, and they'd have a rope in front with a security guard, and the gals would line up, and then we would just say yes, no, and
That's how you do it.
Tinder swipe, baby.
Yeah, but in real life.
That's the original.
And I love it when women get mad because they'll get mad when I say, guys that get girls are more attractive or cheating makes you actually more arousing. That's not true, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, let's go into a nightclub scenario, right? Where we got the most carnal image of men and women today in the modern day world, right? Outside of K-man.
Sexual
right?
zone.
What do you got? All the women typically are concentrated in small sections where there's a minority of men, a majority of women, and in the sexual hierarchy, it's winner take all. And women refuse to accept this concept that a multitude of women are chasing a small percentage of men and they're willing to share. No, that's not me, blah, blah, blah. Shut the fuck up. Because I know when you go to clubs, you don't pay for your drinks, right? No, I don't. Exactly. So the fact that you don't pay for your drinks already tells me that you go ahead and you align yourself with the highest hierarchy of men because that's how you're able to not drink. That's how you're able to drink for free. Yeah. But girls will sit there and try to say, oh, well, that's not true. Or I'm not like that. Or I would never hang out with that guy or whatever. But what do I always say, man? Girls lie, right? What they're attracted to and what they say they're attracted to are two different things.
Even on our show, bro.
Yeah,
they sell us real. Cap it here on the show.
I would
we go to
argue,
the club after, bro. They're doing the same exact shit they would never do. I'm like, you just said in the podcast that you don't go out.
This is why I effectively tell, and this is why we run that exercise, spinning it back to the beginning.
Yeah.
Because women will sit there and say things about this is I'm not like that and that's not attractive or whatever, blah blah blah. And I'm like, do you even know what it takes to attract a woman as a man? Yes, I do. Then that's when we pull out the microphones and we have them run game as a woman and try to get us as a girl. And it's amazing how when we tell them, all right, you're the guy, give us a scenario, they always make themselves 6'3",
hella money,
200, 300 grand a year, making themselves a 1% guy. And I'm like, cool, y'all want to play this game? Fantastic, let's do it. And I give them simple objections that women typically give. Oh, here's my Instagram. Or, oh, no, I'm with my friends. Or blah, blah, blah. And they can't even deal with their own normal female objections that girls give. Girls have zero idea and concept of what it takes to actually attract women. They have zero game, bro. They always fail on their face. And then when they do fail, what do? They start tricking. Well, what's it going to cost for you to come with me tonight? Here's $1,000. And I'm like, what the fuck? Then I ask them, does that work on you? Does that work on you? And they're like, no. And they're like, why the fuck are you trying to get on me? Amazing, bro.
I'm telling you, bro.
I was going to tell you this. I would argue that you always talk about the club scene and everything else. I would say it's easy. You don't even have to be in the clubs. There was maybe you remember this. I think this was back in like 2010, 2012. I've done essays on this, and I actually did an episode on my show about this. But there was this guy who did this kind of social experiment, and what he did was he got two actors. He was one of them, and they had a friend who was supposed to be his handler, and then he was followed around like a mall with a camera crew that was on
Is
him.
it Kobe Pearson?
Yeah, well, I don't know.
YouTube?
I don't know exactly who it was, but he was going around this mall, and he had a handler, and everybody started saying, "Who's that guy? Who's that guy? Who's that guy?" And so they started crowding around him, and then the handler started saying, "Oh yeah, he's so and so, some actor from the latest Spider-Man movie, right?" And all the chicks believed it, and they all bought into the idea, just like this mass hysteria that this one guy was actually some famous actor because he had a camera that was following him and he had his handler there. Yeah. They did that in the mall. Then they went down to Times Square in New York, and they did the exact same experiment, and it worked even better because there's more people around him. Right. And so he's walking down the street and everything, shaking hands and signing autographs and taking selfies, and these girls are just kissing him on the cheek. And they would go up to the girls and they go, "Do you know who this guy is?" And every one of them go, "Oh yeah, I know him. He's from that new movie, right?" They were trying to make up bullshit on the fly, and then they ask guys, "Do you know who this guy is?" And they go, "Oh yeah, he's a great actor. I've seen him in that Spider-Man movie," because they wanted to have that follow-on effect of the guy who all these girls and everybody was paying attention to. He was nobody. He was just like this no-name actor who's doing this social experiment. And what he was doing, and this was like I said back in the day, what he was doing is he was showing how easy it would be to create social proof just by having a handler with you and like a wingman or whatever, and a cameraman that's following him around. And then they even like asked other people, you know, how invested are you in this guy's bullshit fame? And everybody followed into, you know, herd mentality. Now, that was back in 2009, 2010. Here we are in 2022. How easy is it for the average guy to manufacture that same level of bullshit on Instagram, on Twitter, on YouTube, on and you name it? Because really, that's what women are perceptually seeing all the time when they're on Instagram. And
that just sets the expectation.
And that resets the expectations that everybody's a blue check famous dude, right? I'm amazed when women would say, well, I only, like on your show, they'll say, I only want to get with the guy with the blue check.
Yeah.
I'm like, what the fuck?
And this goes back.
I don't have a blue check.
Too bad, man. Too bad for you.
And this is what I mean when I say
followers and these sons of bitches.
This is what I mean when I say like you know, women are fairly delusional because the advent of social media has created an abundance mindset for them to a fault. Now they think, well, since I get guys that are blue check millionaires, etc., sliding in my DMs, this is the caliber of man that not only I can attract, but I can retain and I deserve. And what they don't realize is that no, these guys are hitting you up to fuck only, stupid. They don't necessarily want to wife you up, but girls make the cardinal mistake and conflating he's attracted to me with he wants to date me. And it doesn't go that way. Men just want to smash, but they don't get it. They think, okay, well, this is the caliber of man that I deserve, but that doesn't necessarily correlate.
You know, I think they make that mistake in both directions. I think they make it when, let's say a man is with a woman he loves. He will go way down that totem pole to sleep with a woman that's just different. And now she thinks that she's as valuable or should get that kind of man. But the truth is he only wants to sleep with her and he wants to go home and hold his wife. So they're both wrong. The wife is wrong because she's like, well, if you love me, you won't sleep with other women. And the ratchet hoe, the 304 is wrong because she now thinks she's as valuable as that man. They're both wrong, actually, which is crazy. So
That's
I mean,
a good point.
And they've done experiments with this where, like, you know, they have ice cream shop and they have like 4 flavors versus having 30 flavors. And what they found is that it's you're far less likely
Paradox of choice.
You're far less likely to make the sales went down when they had more flavors because people couldn't make a decision and they just left, right? Because they're overwhelmed with all the choices versus when you had less flavors, they're able to make a decision. And I would argue this is what's going on right now in the dating marketplace. You got a girl, she'll like you, she's somewhat attractive, but she's getting hit on by so many other individuals. She thinks, well, I could do better. I could do better. And it goes back to what you were saying, well, hypergamy.
Right.
Hypergamy is literally based in doubt. And if a girl's constantly getting hit up by guys that are high status, high value, etc., she's going to artificially think, well, these are the type of men that are hitting me up. This is the type of men that I deserve. I can always do better. And not only that, you compound that with the effect that we live in a world nowadays where we prop women up, regardless of how they look, regardless of how they behave. They can be a fat, annoying ass bitch. We're going to tell her she's a strong, independent woman and she should love her curves. We don't penalize women for their deficiencies whatsoever, which is why so many girls walk around, quite frankly, delusional, and they don't operate in reality. So this is where this abundance mindset to a fault comes, where a girl that's 35 years old
and when you
deserves a multi-millionaire.
When you tell them you have 2 choices, baby, you can hope for the best with a guy like Justin Waller and share him with a bunch of girls, or you can lower your standards. When you tell a woman to lower her standards, that goes against her biological evolutionary imperatives. Because if she does, she gets with a guy, or at least perceptually gets with a guy who is not the best that she can do. And therefore that seems like an existential risk for her future security, for her future babies, for everything else. So it's kind of like saying, guys, you just have to bang fat chicks for the rest of your life. It could lower your standards and only have sex with fat chicks because that, you know, you're not all that. So therefore you got to drop your standards. That's one thing to tell a guy that, because guys we're opportunistic breeders. Women, it's all about quality. And so they feel like they deserve the best of the best. And when you tell them you got to be more feminine, you got to get in shape, you got to make yourself more acceptable for guys who are actually lower on the scale as it is, that is like, it seems like it's like life threatening to women to tell them that they have to do that.
and it'll piss them off.
Yeah, but think through this.
That's why they piss them off.
Yeah, but think about this through the lens of what you guys talk about often on your show, is how society teaches men and women just this false narrative, right? So everything that we're talking about right now does one thing: it reduces the birth rate.
Yes.
Right? Reduces the birth rate. So let's go back, Walter, to what you're saying about the Great Reset agenda.
Yeah.
What's the number 2 objective?
Depopulation.
Reduce the birth rate. So again, I don't want to put on that tinfoil hat, but I think it's odd that Disney, the mainstream media, the entertainment business is all pushing everything that will eventually reduce the birth rate.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And
You
I mean, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, remember the other
Please.
night when I said that I feel like Walt Disney has caused more heartbreak, more pain than Adolf Hitler.
Yes, I do remember that.
Because
Good
I feel
quote.
like love has caused more pain than any war. And my definition of happiness is the gap between expectation and reality. And I think what Disney did is created this picturesque, man comes and saves a woman from a tower, and he's big, tall, handsome, strong, rich, beautiful, got a big dick. I mean, everything, right? And then he's not gonna exercise him being that 1% person. And I think that has caused a lot of pain for women, and I think it's caused a lot of pain for men in regards to the fact that they go and get flowers, take girls to dinner, they tell her she's beautiful, they start acting like a punk, and the next thing you know, she hates him and leaves and probably cheats on his ass for doing exactly what he thought he was supposed to do. And then he gets a big reality check when she cheats or leaves, and he splits half of the stuff, and he did everything he was told he should do.
Yeah, and that leads to depression
And anger,
alcohol,
suicide,
drug use,
gun shootings.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
And that's Twitch.
and less
And
entrepreneurship.
Yeah, come on over to guys.
YouTube
Come on over
guys.
to YouTube, guys. We'll go to Twitter and Twitch stream. Come on over. All right, go ahead.
But yeah. And then it goes to what we were talking about, that CNBC article. Before we hit the record button, something that blew my mind is that they asked certain age groups, like certain generations, so Gen X, the baby boomers, Gen Z, how much money would you need to make per year to be financially comfortable or financially healthy? For Gen Z, it was $171,000.
Sheesh.
That completely blew my mind.
Yeah.
For a
And
single
so-
person, for
so-
one
Yeah,
person.
so I
Wow.
tweeted that out and said, well, this is what you get when you live in the age of Instagram.
Yeah.
So the problem with that is that this is what people think they need. Well, reality is that the average income for that age group is probably 40 grand a year,
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Probably less.
So if you look at the discrepancy there, that means a lot of depression, and that means more drug use, and that means more, just kind of self-loathing, and that's far worse for the economy and far worse for the birth rate, and you just get this psychological,
But it's great for
societal downward
depopulation.
spiral.
Yeah.
George, I would say, just out to your point, it's better if I can make you think you need something than you want it. So, for example, right? You said earlier, if hopefully we all come together and we work towards, maybe defending our place in, history in terms of fighting the government per se, right? That's if they want to change. But my argument is, if the government and everyone, the elite is making you think, you know what? I need this protection, I need this control, then rightfully so, I'm going to want you to do it for me. So I'm just saying, we know we should fight the tyranny, whatever. We should probably push back. But if they put in our heads, you know what, we need them, then they got us.
Yeah, that's right. So let's kind of think that through.
Mhm.
So if you've got all these young people believing that they need to make $171,000 a year, so the bar is incredibly high, unrealistic for 99.95% of them. So what's going to happen is if they try to attain that level, and if they keep failing and failing and failing, at some point they're just going to wave the white flag and say, I give up. Well, what's your other option of increasing your standard of living? Well, go to the government.
Bam.
We'll vote for the government
Reliance.
to trade freedom and liberty for stimmy checks.
Yeah.
See, and this is what we do. We trade our freedoms and liberty for quote unquote free money, as an example.
And now you become dependent.
And then you become dependent on the government,
And they got you.
just as if they were your parent. And then they have you what they call from cradle to grave.
Bam.
Central
That's
bank digital currency right there.
Bam.
Yeah.
And
right.
women are far more likely to vote in, effects like
Yes.
that, where, communitarian in effect, where, let's spread the wealth, let's tax the rich and everything else like that. Like women are
I can
far
show
more
you
likely.
statistically that is true.
That's why they
Research
they
that,
vote, for the left, they typically vote
and it
to be
is
more
it is
liberal.
also passed down from family to family too. So like women prior to the sexual revolution right around the 70s, women were more likely to vote conservative. In the 80s, it completely shifted to the point where women are far more likely to vote for communitarian, social, whatever you want to call it, egalitarian politics, politicians, social policies and things like that. And women are the largest voting bloc in the United
100%.
States right now. So is it any wonder why we are entertaining ideas from AOC or something like that about Democrats democratic socialism. We'll just add democratic to the word socialism, and we'll try to soften the blow a little bit. But what they're talking about is exactly what you're saying right now, which is if they don't have a choice to, like, if they can't possibly make $171,000 a year, well, maybe socialism and egalitarianism looks a whole lot better than me trying to earn that crap and earn that kind of money in the first place, so I can actually compete with other guys.
I'll tell you another thing that makes a lot of sense in that scenario when they're all depressed and angry and mad is talk about a bunch of mental health and then pump big pharma on everybody and get them on happy pills.
And you talk about SSRIs that they don't need in the first place.
And how dare somebody say that you should have some kind of mental fortitude and be tough?
Yeah,
how dare you do that?
That's why
Take
Andrew
this
got so
pill.
much heat about you know, depression isn't real. And you know, and a lot of women nowadays there's more women on antidepressant and anti-anxiety medication than ever before. You know, we applaud people being on antidepressant, anti-anxiety medication versus
it is absolutely astronomical the amount of women that are on SSRIs after, like, say 2010 right now. I've shown you we've used that graph on here before. Like it's one of the most famous graphs in the manosphere. It's like this big gigantic spike in women using
and that was, and it was perfectly when social media use started to explode.
If you can medicate the masses, you control the masses.
Yeah.
Dude, you know how many women are on antidepressants, bro? Because they're depressed.
Oh, big time.
That's just scary, bro.
I'll give you another one that's crazy. How about how much they're pushing weed?
Right.
What does weed do to you? Calms you down.
Takes you down.
Sedation.
Yeah.
Boom.
Sedation.
Yeah. So just let's go back to that Romania example. And I mean, not to sound funny, but if all of those people were addicted to drugs or smoking weed every single day,
they're not going to fight back.
How many of them would have gone out there to protest and take down the dictator?
America's asleep, man.
That's why San Francisco's the way it is.
Yeah.
I mean, just homelessness and everyone's just on drugs.
Feces on the sidewalk and needles you got to watch out for. Right, Justin?
You look at, and I don't want to make this a political podcast, but if you look at all these cities that are super blue, you look at a New York City, you look at a Portland, Oregon, you look at a Seattle, you look at a fucking Los Angeles, you look at a San Francisco. All these cities are high homeless populations, feces all over the roads. It's all fucked up. The police are defund the police. Crime is crazy high. Like, this is what happens, right? When you go ahead and tell people, fuck the police and everything else.
What we've done kind of collectively is, like, and I made this case, I think it was on Jedediah's show, is that when men organize societies, it's always hierarchical. So it's always like the military, right? There's the general, there's the lieutenant, there's the corporal, there's the sergeant, whatever, on down the chain of command. And then the same thing applies to business. There's the CEO, there's a CFO, and on down to the last, the grunt employee. That's how men organize society, how we organize, businesses, how we organize government, military, you name it. When women organize societies, it's kind of in the round. It's communitarian. It's more like egalitarian. That's why we tend to think, why it's so popular, a thought for women, even in conservative women today, still think, we're in an equal partnership. We're in an egalitarian. It's all 50-50. We both make joint decisions. And, I respect him and he respects me. It's like, no, you don't, because you have the pussy and he's going to probably follow along with whatever it is that you think it's going to keep the pussy flowing. Right. Yeah, right. So it's not about authority. When we talk about responsibility and authority and how men can't affect the responsibility because they have no authority. Well, that stems primarily from this idea of organizing society in the round. And so for women, they tend to be more communitarian because that's just simply how their psyches evolved, because they had to rely on each other. They're the vulnerable sex. It takes a village to raise a child. They had to cooperate and coordinate. So they're the berry pickers, they're the gatherers, while men were the hunters. And so everything was about, like, who did the best job, who's the chief, who's the next chief, who's the next guy down the line. That's how society has been organized really up until the sexual revolution. After that, after the hormonal birth control, surprise, surprise, now we don't have to worry about getting pregnant anymore. Let's put women into the male space of the workspace, the military, society, put them in the political process, put them in positions that they've never been before, because they're the first woman to ever be in that position. And now how does it look? How does society look when women are the ones organizing society? Well, it looks like democratic socialism. It looks like communitarianism,
which is going on in San Fran.
Which is exactly what produces things like Portland and San Francisco and all these other cities that we're seeing are starting to decay and to ruin as a result of these egalitarian policies rather than hierarchical, patriarchal, whatever you want to call it, policy.
I'll take something else. So last night, right, we had some ladies on the panel and they were talking about the fucking wage gap once again. Right?
Boy.
And it was one of the girls, one of the biggest proponents for
Wednesday.
There's a wage gap, right?
There's that quicksand again.
Exactly. Yeah. Was a grad from University of Miami. And I knew this was going to come because a lot of these women that go to colleges are indoctrinated to think that the wage gap really exists. And I had to explain to her that the wage gap exists not because of sexism. It actually exists because choice. Women choose to go into jobs that pay less in the STEM field. They want to go and work in comfortable air-conditioned offices, and that's why women get paid less. It's based off of choice. And I argue that there's more women in college now than ever before. So if anything, they should be making more money and dominating the STEM fields, which typically take a college degree. And they're still not dominating it. It's still dominated by men. And I was arguing the reason why is because men, right, have that natural proclivity, as we discussed many times before, Rolo, to make money, because we know that our value is contingent upon how much money we earn. Versus for women, their value is not contingent on how much money they earn, which is why they can afford to go into dumbass majors and careers that pay less. Art, chase your passion, whatever. And I was making the argument that because one girl was like, well, women just want to chase their passions or whatever. And I was like, that's true. But women have the privilege to chase their passions, even if it pays less, because there's not a burden of performance on them from a financial standpoint. Right. She's like, I don't get what you're saying. I was like, okay, you dumb bimbo. Let's go into a dream world so that they can understand. And I use the analogy that what if I told you that you can only wear makeup and dress well half of the year, but you have to go ahead and find your dream man? Wouldn't that significantly decrease your ability to find that man? She's like, yes. I was like, fantastic. But you wouldn't want to do that, would you? Well, no, I wouldn't. Exactly. That's what the decision that men have to wrestle with when it comes to earning money. I want to be an artist, but I know that the likelihood of me being an artist and making money is very slim. So what do? I end up becoming a pharmacist or chasing a career that I don't necessarily want to do, right? Which I've met many men that do this, that sacrifice their passion to earn money, because we know that's what we have to do. But women can't understand this fucking concept that men always sacrifice themselves and do more dangerous jobs, do jobs that aren't necessarily meaningful to them or not what they want to do,
or the disposable
to make fucking money, because they know that's where it goes. But if I tell women you can't wear makeup for half a year, they're going to lose their mind. I'm like, that's the equivalent on the male side, and they couldn't get this shit. And the other thing too was that I was trying to tell them that a lot of women tend to believe in this concept of equal. They want equal outcome, and I was like, that doesn't work. Equality of outcome is asinine. It was going to lead to chaos. There's equality of opportunity, but women don't choose to take that opportunity. When given the same opportunity, do they want to go into dangerous jobs? Do they want to be in law enforcement? Do they want to be in engineering? Do they want to be in construction? Whatever. One girl that's in construction, yeah, she's the fucking manager. She's not there with the drill, and I'm sure Justin can speak to this at way higher knowledge than myself. So my thing is that women want equality, and it's there, but they choose not to go into these fields. So it's whose fault is it really that y'all get paid less? You guys work less hours. You guys work less dangerous jobs.
And that, by the way, is the math is hard argument once again. Now, remember, you were just on this show trying to defend something that against was Hassan, who was talking about Andrew Tate saying that women were safer drivers or better drivers. The fact that the fact that you don't even think about the math to that, like there are simply more male drivers on the road. There are, so of course there's going to be more accidents per man because there's simply a larger pool as opposed to women being there, because women don't choose to be long haul drivers. They don't choose to be race car drivers. They don't choose to make their vocation driving. Who does? Men. That's why there's so many more men. So you're talking about apples and oranges. We're talking about if the metric is insurance. It's the same thing for the wage gap, right? What are the careers that women choose, and what are the careers that men have? Like men have higher, death rates in work as it is right now. We don't look at those stats because we're only looking at what affects women. Oh, you're a safe driver. That's the metric for being a good driver. But let's look at the whole picture, and instead of one data point, the fact that we don't default to looking at the whole picture, that should speak volumes in a gynocentric social era. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, no, another thing I was going to say is
too.
The one way to kind of defeat the argument,
he thinks in terms of feminine.
The one way to defeat the argument of the wage gap is it's very easy, because I used to be an entrepreneur for so long. And if you told me that there was a group of people that I could hire and pay them 70 cents on the dollar, I wouldn't hire the other group. That's all. I would have 100% women working for me. So why would I hire a guy? So your only two alternatives there, or options, is that either the employee isn't greedy and doesn't want to make profit, and then he's hiring guys, or he's just going to hire all women. So the fact that you don't see those should prove to you that wage gap really doesn't exist.
And the most simplistic, that's the most simplistic way to look at it. But then they go ahead and say, well, there's so many reasons for that. And, rational, all this, coming up with these stupid ass social buzzwords. And my argument was, she was like, well, women aren't so, this was her other argument. Well, women aren't socialized to go into those careers. Okay. They're not socialized. And my argument to that was like, okay, are you not a human being capable of independent thought? Yes, you are. That's like me saying, oh, well, I was socialized to be a drug dealer. And then 20 years later, when I'm selling crack cocaine, they come and arrest me. And I tell the police, listen, man, you got to understand, bro. It's because they told me I could sell crack and buy these Adidas, man. I was socialized. They don't fucking make excuses for me. They put me in jail for 30 years.
If you're that mentally and emotionally feeble, why on earth would I give you a raise? Why would I give you responsibility?
Shout out Zola.
Here we come with the fucking logic again. So, like, you can't use that excuse. It's like you got to take some personal accountability. It's like you can't sit there and say, I was socialized to be this way. Well, too fucking bad. You got to go ahead and go against the grain. If I was brought up in poverty and I commit crimes, I can't go to the police and the FBI when they arrest me and say, I was indoctrinated to be this way. You can't put me in jail. They put me in jail anyway. Sorry, Justin, you're saying
Oh, no. Good.
Please.
I was just going to say on top of what he said about discrimination, whether it be male or female or race or religion or whatever, as a business owner, if you do your job and you do a good job at it and you're profitable, I cannot afford to discriminate against you.
Absolutely.
I can't afford it. I do not give a fuck what color you are, what religion you are, how you vote. If you are profitable, you can work for me. No problem.
And what's ironic is most people that have that argument about the wage gap, they also tend to be more left-leaning and socialist.
Absolutely.
And they sit there and say that, well, we can't trust employers because they're all greedy. They're all greed. They have this insatiable greed, this insatiable lust for money. But yet they discriminate and hire only men that they have to pay more. Those two thoughts can't coexist.
And the other thing too is I argue when they're like, oh, well, these fields are like sexist and they're male dominated. I argue, well, if it's male dominated, they have even more incentive to hire women because of affirmative action. We had a woman on this panel one time that was in plumbing school.
Plumber.
She could not pass the test. She was not strong enough to have the grip strength to turn the wrench. There was like some kind of test that they give them. They passed her anyway because she was a woman. Okay. The standards for women in law enforcement, in the military, etc., are watered down to try to get women in. There's hiring incentives to get women on. The affirmative action is real and they incentivize women. So you're sitting here telling me, oh, it's sexist and they don't hire women. If a man applies for a job that's male dominated alongside a woman, even if that woman is less qualified, they will hire the woman over the man. So what the fuck are you talking about?
And also, that's to that point.
Comes at equal opportunity.
Bam.
That's to that point. She got paid way more than the other guys, and she still quit. But you know what's funny about that whole argument? They'll be like, you know what? Personally, I'm at my job, and this guy is there before me. He's a manager. I got a manager position, and I'm getting paid less. And I'm like, wait, hold on. You just got the position. How long has he been there? Oh, 5 years. Experience. He's been there longer. Obviously speaking, he deserves a raise because he's been there 5 years. You just got a position. Why do you deserve a raise?
And there's
what value do you bring?
And she had no answer.
Articulate that for me.
I'll share something with you guys that is kind of probably new information or could be insightful. My construction management team is 4 women and 1 man.
Bam.
And my head of operations is on track to get a $25,000 bonus this year. But she's 55 years old. And I just hired another woman that will make well over $100,000 this year, also early 50s. So if you look at it from a decade, a generational perspective, like these women are different class of women than hiring a girl that just came out of college now.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying? It's like, so these women are actually strong, good managers, very well organized, emotionally tough, you know, and it's funny too, because we joke all the time. I always say the problem is weak men. You should see how some of my men act like fucking children. And she just like, shut the fuck up, get out of my office.
I'm sure,
And these guys make good money.
And I think that goes back to growing up on social media.
Yes.
I was talking, again, going back to Josh on the drive down here, because he's a young guy, you know, 19, 20. And I told him that when I was young, you know, 8 years old, during the summer, the only rule was be back by dark. And me and my buddies would take our bikes. We didn't have helmets. We didn't have hats. I mean, we would just take our BMX bikes out and we would go drive 5 miles away, and find a pond and stab each other with knives and shoot each other with slingshots.
I used to go out with my brother and hang out with like our neighborhood friends. And like I was telling you this yesterday on your show. My dad was the one who was like, you know, who was raising my brother and I at one point. And we would be out there and swear to God, we'd be out playing like till, you know, night. And we'd hear my dad would go, you know, whistle real quick, and we'd be like, "Oh, and sorry, we gotta go." Like that was the call to bring you back into the house.
I remember really that loud. Well. But you develop that toughness, right? And I just think back to when I was, you know, 5, 6, 8, 10, 15 years old, and if I would have just been in the house 24/7 online,
Yeah.
I never would have developed that thick skin that made me the entrepreneur that I was, which allowed me to get into that 1% or whatever.
Your parents would not have allowed it.
Yeah.
They wouldn't allow it.
Yeah.
Get the fuck out.
It's like
See you when the lights come on.
parenting.
It's funny in Barbados, like we would do the same thing. We get on our bikes right around, and we'd also venture to like the furthest part possible before the lights, went out. And it's funny because every time the lights were about to go out, there'd be an ice cream truck that came around. So you hear an ice cream truck, like, okay, time to go home.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And I mean, this is controversial. People got mad at me for saying this, but I think bullying's a fucking good thing. Honestly, I think bullying is a way to kind of let people know that what you're doing is unacceptable and is stupid before society has to go ahead and check you on it, right? If you were a fat kid, right, and they told you, haha, you're fat, well, that might incentivize you to go ahead and lose weight when your teenage years versus you becoming a fat ass adult, and it's a lot harder for you to lose it. Or people make fun of you for smelling bad. Or like one thing about children is children are honest.
Yeah.
Right? Kids don't fucking lie. You smell, your teeth are fucked up, or you're ugly, blah, blah, blah. You're going to go ahead and take some initiative potentially to self-improve.
Kind of like my chat whenever I do a show.
Like I got bullied, right? I got bullied growing up, and I thought it was one of the best things ever because us getting bullied actually led to our success. I talk about this, how I grew up with Jordan Reed. He was a tight end, very successful tight end for the Redskins for a while. And his brother was David Reed. He played for the Baltimore Ravens and won a Super Bowl. They used to bully the fuck out of us all the time, and we used to play basketball against them and lose. But us, but it drove us to wake up 6 o'clock in the morning and train to get better. It drove us to want to beat them. It created motivation. It lighted a fire under our ass that, you got to compete. You're not gonna just sit there and be a bitch, right? Get tough. You got to get toughened up. And that's kind of lost in today's society. Like nowadays, it's like, oh my God, virtual bullying and all this other shit. Whatever happened to getting stuffed in lockers and everything else like that? Like men need to go through that adversity.
Those social skills that we were talking about. Yeah, when we were kids at recess, I mean, you just go out there and beat the shit out of each other. That's what recess was. You just get bloody. I remember coming in 4th, 5th, 6th grade. We'd have bloody noses. I mean, your ear would be half ripped off. We used to play this football game, which
Smear the courier.
We played that. Hell yeah.
Basically, just give the kid the football and just murder him, just punch that, and we'd be bloody, bruised, and the teacher would just say, oh, yeah, just put a rag on it. Okay, next subject. But and it sounds cruel and crazy to people who live in today's day and age. But I think it does really not only give you that thick skin, it teaches you as a guy how to be tough. But it also teaches you how to interact with other humans, not just men, but with other women, and to be successful in life and to overcome adversity, which is what making money and being an entrepreneur is all about.
I was telling Justin this the other day, or I was telling this last night. When I met Justin, I knew I could just go, "Hey, what's up, man?" We could because we're that's how guys talk. We insult each other, but we're not insulting each other. We're just giving each other shit, right? Like when guys give each other shit, that's kind of like you're saying, "Are you cool enough to be hanging out with me?" Right? That's lives. Most guys today don't know that. They don't know how to. The most common problem I have when I do counseling online is like how do I develop male networks or a tribe? I don't have a tribe, Rolo. How do I interact with men because they can't interact with women? They don't even know how have social skills to like hang out with other guys. And so if a guy like Justin or me comes up to him and says, "Hey man, what's up?" You like that? They think they're getting bullied. They think they're getting harassed, or they think they're getting hazed or something like that. They think it's abuse because they don't understand how, because they've never had that socialization and that learning process to know how guys interact with other
and build
guys.
camaraderie.
All they know is Fortnite. That's all they know.
Fortnite. They know how to talk shit about each other online, but they don't. Once you get live in front of their faces, they don't know how to
do that in a consulting session with like a 30-year-old guy. But
really,
how do I build my tribe? Well, you need to get on your BMX bike and ride around the neighborhood. Knock on their exactly.
But Myron,
here's our practice.
But Myron, you're so right about the bullying.
Yeah,
because the guys, a lot of the guys who were on the outside, those are some of the guys who ended up becoming the biggest entrepreneurs in the world. Yeah, because of all that bullying, the best bodybuilders in the world were fat.
Yep.
Or just like chubby, or like just couldn't get the girls and stuff. Arnold Schwarzenegger, he's like, I wanted to get jacked because I wanted girls, but he was bullied all like his entire life.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it makes you strong. It's that getting that chip on your shoulder is so damn important.
Yeah,
but nowadays, good luck on that.
Yeah, and this is why we have so many guys that are fucking pussies, man.
Right.
Like, if I'm gonna be all the way honest, like a lot of guys, I have to be really aggressive sometimes on the show and let guys know it's unacceptable to be fat. It's unacceptable to be fucking scared and be a pussy about certain things. Like men don't have the privilege of just being accepted. you have to become the guy that you want to be. You know, like girls get that privilege in 2022 where she could be a fat raging bitch and no one's going to check her on it. As a guy, you don't get that privilege. If you're a fucking loser, you're a loser, and reality is going to reinforce that you're a fucking loser. Your peers won't respect you, bitches won't want to date you, people are going to laugh at you, etc.
That's how you get a kid like XQC. That's how you get that.
There you go.
Oh, God. Swear to God. I'm not, this is not flame baiting or anything like that. That's how you get that mentality. You did the show on him. I did the show on him too. You know, when he was with Tate, I was like, this guy is a product of exactly the generation of the Gen Z that can't get $171,000 to compete with the rest of his, peers to get pussy. So consequently, he's got a girlfriend that he has to sort of like placate to and hope to God that she's going to be loyal to him. And he's got to find some like workaround to be the guy who doesn't go downstairs to fight the intruder, but hope that the girlfriend is going to respect him enough to want to bang him, even though he won't go down there and he's a coward.
Yeah. And then covered up with fulfillment.
Yes.
So the whole problem
sentence.
Right. Yeah. The whole problem is weak men in the first place, because what he's doing is using that as a mating strategy by giving up all. Yeah, that is his whole game is kissing girls' ass, and I can tell you
his game is hoping that women will respect him for that bullshit.
But if you back up a little bit and think through what you were just saying. With this hypergamous, if that's the right word, lens, and more women making more money and fewer guys being in their dating pool, then they're going to have kids later on in life. That means they're going to have fewer kids. If they have fewer kids, that means more helicopter parenting. And if you have more helicopter parenting, because instead of having 10 kids, now they've got one kid and they're overly protective because that's the only one they've got.
Right.
And then that breeds weaker and weaker men. So it's this cycle. And it's this feedback loop that it just gets worse and worse and worse.
That's assuming they even have the kid and then they don't get divorced and they don't destroy the man that they're with, and it's a two-parent household or whatever. Because we know from the numbers, right, that single mother households are literally one of the biggest predictors on your kid being a fuck up in society to some degree.
Criminality, drug use, suicide, yes, name it.
If they don't abort the kid.
Right.
That's true.
Yep.
Which goes back to what? Great Reset.
Right.
Great Reset.
Yeah.
We got some chats here.
Yeah, I was gonna say super chats are piled up.
I'll read these real fast. We got Primo Noir, $50. Thank you so much. Hope you guys are enjoying the conversation. This high IQ conversation. Sam Chansky goes, with the sheer amount of debt throughout the global economy, how is default-driven debt deflation not inevitable? Financial institutions, pension funds, etc., are sitting in several orders of magnitude more debt and derivatives than the entire global GDP deflation. And that's $100. Thank you so much, my friend.
Governments can print money. Governments can print money. So it is true. He's right that there are significant deflationary pressures. And if governments just sat back and if central banks did nothing, you would have a complete deflationary debt blow up. But what the governments are going to try to do is combat that with, we'll call it quote unquote money printing. So there's enough currency units out there to pay the existing debt. But governments have to do it because the way currency units are usually come into existence is through the creation of debt. So if you create, let's say, $10 of debt, you're actually only going to produce $5 because you've got the principal plus the interest. So that $5, in order to pay off the $10 in debt, has to circulate with high degrees of velocity. You see, if you don't get that velocity, then you've got that deflationary spiral that this gentleman was talking about. Exactly. So the only way to combat that is for the governments, for the central banks, to in tandem to create more and more currency units. But unfortunately, that creates more economic distortions, malinvestment, and misallocation of resources, which goes back to what is wealth. It's goods and services. That creates less goods and services, which reduces the standard of living.
Bam.
And he had a chat, by the way.
Is it better to self-publish or invest in litigation to publish with a major printing house?
Self-publish.
Self-publish?
End of story.
Okay.
All right.
Krishna, 1929. The only way is to be a high-value man in all fields. Shout out to Jay Waller and the War Room. Kish. Yeah, no. I mean, I would argue in today's day and age, and I guess we could talk about this too with what we got going on with the recession, how that's going to affect the marketplace. But we could definitely talk about that.
By the way,
$100.
$100. Thank you so much, my friend. Marco. And then we got Top 2, Jeff, Hefe Miguel, can't wait for quarter 3 sauce, fixing to take advantage of this coming economic downturn. Yes, absolutely, man. DL saying, I really want to know podcast. Brother Gammon is 100% correct. Fellas in the chat, I love y'all, but too many of you motherfuckers are weird. Fix that ASAP. Money, game, and frame don't mean shit if you're weird as fuck. Keep leading from the front, gentlemen. Thank you so much.
That is very true, man.
And DL saying it's a little bit older, so he knows exactly where
well
they're talking
Yeah.
coming from. Sandeezy, being a DJ at the club is easily one of the only places where intersexual dynamics are displayed on full blast. Working in nightlife isn't what exposed me to the red pill mindset. Is what exposed me to red pill mindset. Didn't mean for the super chat earlier to sound so sus. Fresh check DMs. Okay, it's
all right,
all good.
brother.
And then Devarsh goes, I need to get my brain restructured with 2022 updates for dopamine release. Cool. And all right, I think we're caught up there. So so we're officially in a recession, guys. How do you guys think that's going to affect the dating game? I mean, as you guys know, there was an article that came out. We talked about it on the Timcast pod where, a majority of women found men as economically unattractive. We know that the average man nowadays is about 5'8", 5'9", making between 40 to 50K per year, roughly, all across the United States. And it's funny because when we mention these numbers to women and we tell them this average guy, they literally say,
what?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
I would never.
It's incredible to see like the reactions to the average guy.
Yeah.
You know what I wish you guys would do in a podcast or with a show with the
Go ahead,
gals
give the suggestion.
is just do a demographic study of Miami. And just start off with the population, and then just say, okay, what percentage of the population is female? Okay, so let's say there's 4 million people in Miami. So let's say there's 2 million gals, or 2 million men, excuse me.
Okay.
And then say, okay, what portion of that is within an age group that you would find acceptable? Okay, so now you're down to 500,000. Say, okay, well, how many of those guys are single? Okay, well, now you're down to 100,000. Say, how many of those guys are over 6 feet tall? All right, now you're down to 10,000.
Yep.
How many of those dudes are straight? Okay, how many? Right? And then
Narrow down to 10 guys.
How many of those guys make over 500,000 a year? And all these, prerequisites that they have.
Yeah.
And what you find is even in a city like Miami, you're down to like 50 dudes. Like seriously.
Yeah.
And again, it's a math problem, but I don't think they realize that because they've never actually gone through the numbers.
And it's funny
because they open up their DMs and these guys talk to them, so they have
But
this
it's guys from all over the world.
Exactly.
So they just assume that there's millions of these.
And you got to add
gentlemen here in Miami when it's not.
You got to add in also the fakers as well. The guys that look the part, but not really the part.
Yeah.
So they get bamboozled. Oh, this guy's successful. No, he isn't. Just rent a car.
Yeah. So I'll toss it up to the panel. So what are your guys' thoughts? Obviously, now that we're officially in a recession, I mean, we're back. What 2000? Do you think this recession is going to be worse than 2008?
Well, the market is saying yes. The reason I'm saying this is because if you look at the yield curve on the treasury market, that's what we were talking about before. The inversion has been sustained for quite some time. When I talk about an inversion, I mean like the 2-year treasury, the yield is higher than the 10-year treasury. So that makes no sense. In a good economy, the longer you lend someone money, the higher the interest rate you would charge.
Yeah.
Because the more risk you have.
Yeah.
But what we have now is people lend the government money for 6 months, and the yield they're paid is higher than if they lend the government money for 10 years. That's what we call an inverted yield curve.
Okay.
That makes no sense.
These are private investors giving the government money.
Well, just anyone buying these bonds, that's the market rate.
Is that the government saying, "Oh shit, I need it now"?
Well, it's the market saying the Fed is going to reverse course.
Right.
So the Fed right now is on a tightening cycle. We just talked about them tightening by 75 basis points. But what the long end of the yield curve is telling us, when you get that inversion that looks so bizarre and just doesn't make any sense whatsoever, even if you don't know economics, is it's people, the investors, the market saying, I would rather go out there and put my dry powder, my cash, in treasuries because I think the Fed is going to be lowering rates in the future, not raising them. And so if they're lowering rates, what type of environment would cause them to lower rates? That would be a recession and a significant recession. Therefore, asset prices, risk assets like the stock market, maybe housing, coming down. So that's what the treasury market is telling you right now. They're far smarter than I am. Another thing, we've got something called a euro-dollar future curve. So I'm not going to go into specifics, but this is just basically global bets and trillions of dollars with very sophisticated money, where they're making bets on what the future of the Fed funds rate, and that's the interest rate the Fed sets, what the Fed funds rate will be in the future.
Okay.
And when you go out to 2022, it goes, or the end of 2022, it goes up to, let's say, 2.53%, but then it starts going down, and it goes down and down, and it inverts massively going into 2023. And what's scary about both these curves is the inversion is becoming, the timeline on the inversion is decreasing. So what I mean is the inversion in the yield curve on the treasury started, let's say, at the 5-year, then it moves to the 2-year, then it moves to the 1-year. Now, just as about 2 weeks ago, it's moved to the 6-month. Let's say it moves to the 3-month. That means it's getting worse and worse and worse. And the inversion on the Eurodollar future curve is doing the exact same thing. When it first inverted, this was maybe 4 or 5 months ago, it was inverted out to 2024.
Okay.
And then it moves into 2023. Now it's at the end of 2022 and getting closer to today's date, meaning that the odds that the market is betting that the Fed is going to be lowering rates sooner than later. And again, you have to think,
even though we've been increasing it, you think they're going to come back down.
That's what the market is saying. And,
Wow.
and it's saying that it's going to be sooner and sooner and sooner. That's where the big money is, and the smart money is putting their bets, right? So then the question becomes, okay, well, how significant is the recession going to be? And if you take these inversions that predict recessions 9 out of 10 times, and you compare them to past recessions, we're almost at the exact same spot that we were in 2007.
Right.
Okay. Right now.
Right now. So what you can imply from that, and again, there's no certainties, there's only probabilities.
Yeah.
But what you can imply from that is the market is saying that we are going to have some event in 2022 or 2023 that's going to be as significant as the GFC.
And how likely is it that the Fed is going to end up lowering rates too late? Because they're increasing them right now. We're going to get another increase a little later on this year. But for once, I mean, it almost seems like they're just raising the rates in order just to lower them down later and start printing in order just because they don't want to print right away.
Yeah.
They just want to like have something so they can lower it, say we're doing something, and then just start printing money. Well, we did lower the rates.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Is that to get through November?
Oh, well,
Isn't that midterms?
yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot of that that's going into it. They're just trying to prop things up so they can kick the can down the road to where you can buy votes and get past that time frame. But even with that, we're assuming that the Fed can lower rates without exacerbating the problem. Because see, in the past, when they were lowering rates, we didn't have a 9.1% CPI print.
Yeah.
See, inflation was at like 1.5%.
Yeah.
So they could come out and do the stimmy checks. They could do $5 trillion of deficit spending.
Yeah.
It was being monetized by the Fed. The Fed could take their balance sheet up to $9 trillion, and no one's going to say anything other than good job.
Yeah.
Because the CPI is at 1.5.
Yeah.
Now all of a sudden, the number one issue with the average Joe and Jane right now is consumer price inflation.
Yeah.
So what happens
For everyday items?
So what happens if we go into a recession? If we go into a recession and the CPI is still at 9% or 10% or going higher. Now, all of a sudden, the government's in a position where they can't prop up the economy. There is no Fed put. There is no government put. So the only thing they can do is sit back and watch it just collapse, right? And because stepping in would exacerbate the problem of inflation, which is the last thing the politicians know or want, because they know that's political kryptonite.
Yeah.
So you see, they've painted themselves into this corner.
And it's an election year.
Yeah.
Yep.
So their best case scenario is if the CPI started to come down, and then that might give them political cover to go ahead and create more currency units to prop up the economy. But that just takes us into another wave of consumer price inflation, when in 2-3 years, we're right back where we were today, but it's far worse. Because every single time they go through that process of spending money, sending stimmies, doing whatever, it's creating economic distortions that in the long run make the economy far less efficient and far less able to produce those goods and services, which at the end of the day, like we say, is the true wealth.
Right.
You see, there are no free lunches.
Yeah.
That's what people have to understand.
Yeah.
If the government comes in and props things up, or if the Fed does quantitative easing, or if they disrupt the market forces and drop interest rates artificially low, we will pay for that one way or the other. And if we pay for it later, when we do pay for it, it's going to be exponentially worse.
Who do you see? What demographic of earner do you see this is going to fuck up the hardest?
It's always the poor and middle class.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Always. Listen, I'm not going to be that affected.
Yeah.
Why? Because I'm going to come in and buy all the assets when they're cheap. So I'm going to get rich.
Yeah.
I'm going to get even more rich than I already am.
Yeah.
You know, and Justin, you know, all the guys in this room, we're the ones that are going to be buying from all the poor and middle class people who bought at the top.
Yeah.
And I don't like to say that. That doesn't make me happy.
Yeah.
I
that
wish.
doesn't feel good.
No,
It's just
absolutely
true.
not. No, absolutely not. But that's the reality of the
I
situation.
think people need to know this though, because it's not common. You're gonna have, you know, some multimillionaires in the room telling y'all this is like this was gonna happen, and we're gonna benefit from it. But you know, the poor and the middle class. So is it fair to say some guys that are earning, people that are earning what, 20 to maybe 100K are going to be the ones that get the most affected with this situation?
Yeah. So go back to what we were talking about with the average checking account.
Yeah.
In that example that I gave.
Yeah.
You know, it starts off, and just to give a round number here, in 2019 at $100. It's gone up to 150 because of PPP, stimmy checks, and a lack and decrease in their expenses artificially.
All this money getting thrown out to people.
But what it did, because the excess demand, decrease in supply, is it increased inflation. So now that $150 buys them less than the $100 did. But unfortunately, they're decreasing that $150 balance at a faster clip.
Yep.
So they're going to draw that down to zero. So now not only are prices higher, but they have zero in their account instead of $100.
Yeah.
That's the reality of the situation.
Yeah.
Middle class gone, man.
Yeah. And I mean, we're just keeping it real with you guys. Like that's who's going to feel it the most. And unfortunately, that is the economy, you know, like like it's the people in the middle class that really, you know, dictate the economy.
Shout out to Andrew, man. He mentions it all the time. Have yachts and have nots. I mean, it's going to be rich and poor, two-class system.
Yeah.
I mean,
you know it's coming, right? I mean, I watch Patrick Bet-David talk about this all the time, where it's like, you know the recession is coming. You know the storm is on the horizon right now. What are you going to do to survive it? One, and B, like, how can you profit in that? I think it was when you were on here with Kiyosaki and Kenny McElroy. It was like, what are you going to do? How are you going to set yourself up now so that you can profit once the storm hits? It's like, you know, it's coming. You got no excuse for not like positioning your pieces before you can. I mean, even if you're like a middle class, you know, middle earner right there, there's still things that you can do to sort of like to prepare yourself for.
Definitely. I think you know, knowledge is more powerful now than ever before. And I think you know, being at the forefront and understanding how cryptocurrency works, how the real estate market works, how stocks, commodities, you know, I've been studying all this stuff because I'm like, you know, as you guys know, I'm really heavy into real estate, but I'd be stupid to not, you know, go ahead and get at least decently versed. Or at least
George knows what he's going to do when the storm hits. He knows, he's like, I hate to do it, but I'm going to go buy. It's a fire sale. I'm going to go buy up the things.
Our parents told us when we were young, save for a rainy day. And it just happens. The rainy day means to be recession. So if you were not listening to your parents when they told you, save for a rainy day, that's on you, bro.
Well, so George, what are some things I guess people can do? You know, because a lot of our viewers, you know, tend to fall in the middle class. What can they do to prepare themselves or protect themselves from this situation that's coming?
Well, I can tell them what I'm doing. For my own portfolio.
Go ahead.
So I've got a much higher percentage of cash than I normally have. We call it just dry powder.
Okay.
And what I've done with some of that cash is I've purchased actually 1-year treasuries. So, and I know that may sound weird because long term, I don't like treasuries at all because you got a negative interest rate relative to inflation.
Yeah.
So you're losing purchasing power, but you've got two choices. And here's how I look at it. So long term, just to back up a little bit, I'm very bullish on commodities.
Okay.
And this goes back to the Great Reset agenda.
So,
but I don't want to go down that path, right? So I think we're going into a long-term commodity super cycle. Okay. Usually these go 10, 15 years, but they're very volatile. Right. I think we bottomed out in 2020 when oil was negative $38 a barrel. I think that's going to be the bottom of the super cycle when we look back.
Okay.
So, but I'm not buying now because the prices have really run, but I want to build a long-term position. Yeah. So the way I look at it is if I can take a large amount of my dry powder, if I could buy 1-year treasuries at, let's say 3%, okay, I'm not going to buy those commodities until the price comes down. Well, the price probably won't come down unless we go into a significant recession. If we go into a significant recession, the probability is high that the Fed lowers rates back down to zero.
Yeah.
Okay, let's think about this. If the Fed lowers rates back down to zero, what's going to happen to the interest rate on the 1-year treasury? It's going to go back down. The last time Fed funds was at zero, the 1-year treasury was trading at, let's say, 10 basis points, right? So if the yield on the 1-year treasury goes from 3% down to, let's say, 50 basis points, that means that I'm going to make a significant capital gain on those treasuries, which I actually don't want, but I just want to hold them until the price of the commodity gets low enough to where I can sell the treasury, take the cash and buy the commodity that I actually want long term.
Okay.
But what you're doing is you're in worst case scenario, let's say the commodities don't go down to a price where I want to buy.
Yeah.
Well, fine. Now you're getting paid 3% on your dry powder, when if you had it in the bank, you'd only be making, let's say, 1%.
1%.
Yeah,
that was
you
going to
wouldn't
be the
be
question.
making
Is like
anything.
that's what you're actually doing with the cash
Yeah.
to protect it against inflation. Is you're putting
And
it.
George,
But also too, I am doing that, but just so I'm clear, if there's an environment where commodities go down to a price where I think they're going to be attractive, most likely the Fed will have lowered rates, in which case I'd have a capital gain on my dry powder. So then when I cash out my dry powder to buy the commodities, I'm going to have more cash, let's say 10, 15% than I had before. And if you use leverage, which I wouldn't suggest, but if you're sophisticated, you could use leverage, and then you could turn that 10% gain into maybe even a 20% gain on your dry powder while you're waiting for those commodity prices to come down.
And George, can you explain a little bit why because obviously we know if the rates are going down, then the price of the T-bond is going up.
Correct.
That's why you're getting money.
Yeah, thank you for clarifying. Yeah, so for the people, just to understand, there's an inverse relationship between the interest rate and the price of the bond.
Okay.
So if the interest rate goes up, the price of the bond goes down.
Okay.
If the interest rate goes down, let's say from 3% down to 1%, the price goes up.
Okay. Of the bond.
Of the bond goes. So you could sell it. Let's say you buy $1 million worth of 1-year T-bills.
Treasury bonds. Okay. From the government, right?
Yep.
Or on the secondary market, whatever.
Okay.
And that's at 3%. Okay. If the interest rate, the going rate for T-bills 1 year goes down to 1%, you can sell that position at a significant capital gain. So let's just say you bought it for $1 million, you sell it for I'm just using round numbers.
Yeah, round numbers. Yeah.
But you can sell it for 1.2 million.
Yeah.
And now you can buy 1.2 million worth of commodities.
Bam.
Where before you could only buy $1 million, and your downside is if they don't lower rates, let's say they increase rates, then you just hang on to maturity and you get paid 3% when you would have gotten paid 1% in a bank account.
Yeah. Okay.
Damn, that's powerful.
Bitcoin's a commodity too.
What's that?
Bitcoin, uranium, or commodities.
Yeah. I like, that's a whole different rabbit hole, but yeah.
Okay. No, that's good stuff.
That's some game right there, guys.
Yeah,
For
yeah,
free.
Game.
I got a question. Are there any particular commodities that you would buy?
Yeah. Well, not right now.
But like when the time comes, are there certain ones you would focus on?
Yeah. So what I do is I just set up a watch list. And, what's really cool is some of the strategies that I use when I talk to people like Jim Rogers, as an example, and I talk to him about, what he's doing. When he talks about his strategies, they're very similar to what I came up with organically and just reading books and what I've employed. So that always makes me feel good. Whenever you're doing the same thing as a legend like Jim Rogers. But the point there is I try to set up a watch list. So I say, I'm not buying now, but what would I like to buy if the price got cheap?
Yeah.
So right now that's copper. Copper. If you look, let's go to the Great Reset agenda. What are the global elite pushing? Electrification. We got to be net zero by 2050.
Yeah.
Let me tell you what, if we're going to even if we don't even get close to net zero by 2050, we're going to need probably triple the amount of copper than we have access to right now. And there's almost zero capital going into mining. Why? Because of ESG, ironically enough.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's not environmentally friendly to dig a hole in the ground. But what they don't realize is you have to dig that hole in the ground to have your Tesla. There is no Tesla without a hole in the ground.
Yeah.
Or without new holes in the ground.
And when you say electrification, just for the audience to understand, basically getting off of fuel vehicles, right? Going to all electric cars.
Yeah, or the whole economy. And they're trying to create the whole economy, and that's again a whole nother rabbit hole.
Yeah.
But it assuming that they're going to continue, the government's going to spend money and deficit spend on Build Back Better, or even this Inflation Reduction Act. Yeah, we were talking, which will just create more inflation. Yeah. Even in the Inflation Reduction Act, you look at it, and a lot of that money is going into green energy or promoting or giving tax credits to people who buy electric cars or whatnot.
Yeah.
All an electric car is just a moving battery, which the components need a massive amount of copper. In fact, I watched a presentation today where the person was showing the amount of copper in like a 2008 Mustang or something like that, right? And I can't remember the exact, whether it's pounds or what the unit was, but it was about 44. And then they said, okay, well, how much is in a Toyota Prius? So not just an electric, but a hybrid and a very small one.
Yeah.
And that was like 88.
Oh shit.
And then it went up to a Cybertruck, the proposed Cybertruck.
Yeah.
And like there's more copper that goes into a Cybertruck than like 5 normal cars.
Wow.
You know, something like that.
So copper.
So copper very bullish. And if you think the Klaus types are completely insane, but they're power hungry and they're going to try to implement these policies, well, that's how you can make money on the insanity of the central planners, the authoritarians, and the Davos types, right?
Clever.
So copper, nickel, like we said, uranium. I like uranium. That's part of the watch. I like gold miners a lot.
Gold.
Because they've just been getting beaten down, and to where I think you could consider them cheap right now. But again, I'm not buying them, just to be clear. They're on that watch list.
George, what about coal?
Love coal.
Coal.
Absolutely
That's a
love
good one.
coal. Yeah, for your viewers, if they want a book recommendation, I'd highly suggest reading or listening to Jim Rogers' book that he came out with in 2003, 2004 called Hot Commodities. So this was right at the beginning stages of the last commodity super cycle we were in. That was from 96 roughly to 2011. Okay. One of his favorite commodities at the time was lead. And you remember this because you probably remember this because you're a little older, but back during the early 2000s and late 90s, lead was like public enemy number one. It was it was like getting in kids' bloodstreams and poison. And they were taking it off paint.
Lead poison.
So there was
In the water
money, no money going into lead whatsoever. No one.
I remember that as
it
a
was
kid.
uninvestable, they said. But Jim Rogers pointed out that yes, it is true. There's some downsides to lead, but it's also a component in car batteries.
Right.
Because it's a component of car batteries, and you've got China, you've got India, you've got all these emerging markets where the people go from riding a horse to riding a motorcycle to driving a car. This is the way it works. That means there's going to be high demand or in very inelastic demand for lead, even though there's no money going into the production. And it takes 10 years, let's say, to get more production and increase capacity online. That means the price has got one thing to do, and that's go straight up. And if you look at a chart of lead from 2002 to 2008, it's a moonshot. I mean, you need a telescope to see the price.
Wow.
And I think it's going to be the exact same thing.
Gang for lead.
But if you think of the argument back then against coal or against lead, it's the exact same argument you hear today for coal. It's public enemy number one. And the thing is, but what's happening with Germany, by the way?
No nuclear power.
So
All
they
coal.
have no nuclear, they went off nuclear power and they became completely dependent. And this is one of the greenest
Coal and
countries
gas.
on the planet, right? They're all the greenies. So what do they have to do? Because they don't get any more nat gas from Putin or less nat gas. They start burning coal. That's the only way they're getting electricity right now. So you see the inelasticity in. Oh, and by the way, what does a Tesla use to run? It's not electricity. It's coal. Because where are we getting the electricity? We're getting the electricity to run the Tesla from burning coal. So you've got this problem that the greenies have, right? But the bottom line is there's very inelastic demand for coal, which we will see unless you want people to freeze to death or just not have electricity, right? But there's no money that has gone into the production of new coal mines, which take a long time to come online, or at least increase capacity from the coal mines we have. And think about it. If you were a CEO of an oil company or a copper company or coal for that matter, and you had all these politicians saying that we're going to shut you down in the next 10 years, or California saying that we're not going to allow fueled cars, or diesel powered semi trucks or something like that. Are you going to invest $1 billion into increasing your coal capacity? Absolutely not. Because based on what the government's saying, or what Klaus or Biden or Trudeau are telling me, I'm not even going to be in business in 10 years. So why the hell would I invest in more capacity when I could just buy my share backs and just increase the price because I reduced the supply? That's from a rational standpoint, that makes sense. Well, you want to be on the bullish side of that transaction.
Wow.
So that's one reason why I really like commodities.
Okay.
Nice.
What about platinum?
Platinum, It's okay, but I haven't looked into it as much.
Okay.
You know, I really like the commodities. That
Uranium, gold.
they're going to be part of energy.
Coal.
I like
lead.
that because the demand is very inelastic.
Okay. So all electric kind of like commodities, basically.
Yeah, the electrification, because, you know, I'm personally going to be battling against the central planners and the authoritarians, you know, because I'm someone that, as most people know from watching my YouTube channel, I stand up, and I would encourage other people to stand up and fight for freedom, liberty, and free market capitalism.
Yep.
You know, that's what's going to get us out of this shitstorm, you know.
Yeah.
But it's also, I think, good to have hedges in your portfolio, because one way that we can fight back is by organizing and coming together, like we said. But another way is to increase your financial strength.
Yep.
Because money doesn't buy you happiness, but it buys you a hell of a lot of freedom.
Yep.
Right. And I've done all these things with my YouTube channel, and I've gone to all of these functions. Like I went to the rally against the vaccine mandates in Washington, D.C.,
Nice.
you know, to show my support for that. But I was able to do that because I had the financial wherewithal.
Bam.
Right. So if you're able to increase your finances while they're trying to pull all of these insane policies, you know, the politicians and central planners, that just puts you in a better position to fight back, which is, I think, what we should all be doing right now.
Okay.
Well said.
Yeah, that's a good thing, man. I mean, yeah, getting yourself in a position to win. I'll say for me, right, from what I'm planning, right, from a real estate perspective is, as you guys know, right, when interest rates go up, it's kind of good. The housing market is, you know, cooling off a little bit where the prices are coming down. The buyers are starting to get into reality more. As you guys know, it was really high, really expensive to buy a house before. So my thing is, when the interest rates go up, I look at it like, okay, this is a good time to get in because people can't afford a home like that anymore. So I'm gonna start looking more at, you know, the single family homes, the starter homes, the 3-2s, duplexes that have, you know, 2-1s or triplexes, whatever. Because as as interest rates go up, houses are less affordable. So what do people have to do? They have to go back to renting. So it's a good time to be a landlord right now. Yes, it does suck that the interest rates are a little bit higher, but keep in mind, guys, that in general, the real estate interest rates right now, probably around 6 to 7%. Still not that bad in the grand scheme of things, you know. And it's good because it keeps all these fucking weirdos kind of off the market that you would have lost your house to potentially. So I think it's good if you're investing in like properties that, you know, have a high capacity to be able to rent, you know.
George, what do you think about the carbon offset market because the greenies, it's everything, it's going to be worldwide as far as like buying carbon. It's like a developing, according to Kiyosaki and McElroy, it's a developing market. Do you think it's something that's like going into the recession that it will be something that's viable?
Yeah, I think it's interesting, but it's just not the type of investments I make. The reason is because it's a very new industry. And so I see it a lot like angel investing, right? When you're angel investing, there are no profits. Sometimes there's not even revenue. So you've got a lot of risk out there. Now your upside is massive. I guarantee, I give them that, but it's just not the type of investor I am. And I think it goes back to my days.
It's too volatile, right, at this point, or
well, it's just how do you?
He's too competent to guess.
How do you game it?
He's too competent to guess.
There's no cash flow. There's no cash flow. So the way I always say it, to keep it simple, is I like buying $1 for 50 cents. What you're doing in that game is you're buying nothing for $3, hoping it goes to $5. You see, I like just buying a cash flow, a revenue stream, or something like a commodity where you know has zero chance of going to zero. You know, quite literally.
That's a good point.
So you're buying something physical and something tangible. You know, like when you buy uranium from the Sprott Trust, as an example, you're getting a claim on physical uranium. You know, that's most likely not going to go to zero, and it's going to be worth more in the future. We're right now on a business, like, which is basically what that is.
Carbon offset credits. Yeah. In case anybody doesn't know, it's they're credits you would buy for like pollution. So if you're like, you know, Berkshire Hathaway or something like that, you're a big polluting company. And you're tapped out of your carbon credits because the greenie said you only get a certain amount of them. What happens is on the open market, you can buy what are called offset credits, so that like when they need them at the end of the year, because they don't want to do the policies. But so what they have to do is they'll tap out their credits, and then they have to go buy them from somebody else who has surplus credits. And then so you can buy them like at the beginning of the year, and like that's why he's saying, you know, that they're zero value. when you buy them, but when it comes to tax time and they really need those things, that's when the price of those offset credits go up. It's almost like it's a developing market.
It's just
right now.
Yeah,
and everyone all over the world has to do it now.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's a very developing market, and that's why I think there's huge opportunity. And I'm not saying it's not a good idea to research it.
Yeah,
I'm just saying that that's not my style.
Yeah,
my style is going out and buying a McDonald's, for $1 million. That's throwing like 200,000 off a year. And just never sell it and increase it year by year to where it's doing, 5 years down the road, it's doing 250 instead of 200.
I'm the same exact way with my real estate.
Throwing off that cash flow, that's how I like to invest. So I look at stock investing the same way.
Okay. Yeah. That's exactly how I look at my real estate. I buy and hold, I don't really, I don't even like, using Airbnb really, constant tenants in there. And what about you, Justin? What's your, because I know you're a diversified real estate investor. You're in everything as well. What are your thoughts as far as like with what's going on here?
More real estate, more crypto, gold, uranium, like you're saying. Is in fact, I've not bought a lot of gold. I've seen Sterling buy a little bit, but I was planning to get in touch. In fact, I think I texted you the other day about that uranium. So I'll probably do that. And then I want to double down. The closer and closer it gets, because we don't know where it is. And the more money I make, the more scared I get. Yeah, I don't know if that makes sense, but it's like the more money I make, the more fearful I get and really want to make more money.
It's actually almost harder to keep money than it is to make it. It sounds bizarre, but especially when you get to a certain level. Like if you make $1 million, it's pretty easy. But once you get to like $10-50 million, $100 million, that's actually pretty hard to invest that in a way where you can just maintain your purchasing power.
I always say the formula is kind of like 3 steps: like make it, learn how to keep it, and then to make it grow. And so I feel like I am very much in I want to make more because I'm scared, but I think my main focus is how to fucking keep it.
Well, whilst which the component,
taxes.
I was going to say a big part of keeping it is dealing with the tax mitigation.
The taxes,
which is why I like real estate so much, because it gives such crazy benefits, right?
You just bought a G-Wagon, bro. That's going to also reduce at least the price of the car.
It's a G-Wagon.
The G-Wagon is good, but it's not going to put a dent in my tax bill.
Right.
To be quite honest. And I know George called me old, but I'm 15 years younger than George.
No. A little older.
But I think this is really the time where you want to start making. What about you, Miguel? What's your thoughts on with the recession going on? What do you think is a move, or what are you doing?
Obviously, what I do is I invest in what I know, and I know cryptocurrencies. I like real estate, and I like cryptocurrency businesses. Right. That's what I invest in. So most of my cash flow goes so like right now, 80% of what I make is staying in cash right now, because I'm trying to buy the dip. The only thing dry powder. The only thing that I did buy was I bought Ethereum at $900. Doing pretty good on that. Yeah, that was pretty.
I'm mad I missed it. I'm gonna get. I bought it when it was like 12.
It's gonna come back. It's gonna come back.
I'm ready.
Promise you guys. But I'm investing in what I know. But I do crypto full time. I teach crypto full time. So I mean, one thing that we're starting. I mean, well, maybe Charlie get mad at me if I say, but we're starting a business that there's very few of those businesses out here in crypto, because what I'm seeing is a need to service people in the cryptocurrency industry. So I'm investing into businesses for the cryptocurrency industry, as well as businesses to support the red pill as well. So that's what I'm doing with my cash right now. And then at a certain point in time, this is where I got from Myron, talking to Myron a lot, is I'm going to take a certain portion of my cash into real estate. Because crypto and real estate, I really like that, because real estate kicks off cash flow. I take that cash flow into risky assets during the right times, make multiples on my capital, then put that back into real estate, and then put that back into businesses. And then in certain times, I take profits on my crypto, then starts building up the cash reserve again.
Yeah. Nice. One thing I will say about Bitcoin right now that I find fascinating, again, not that I'm buying, but it's definitely on a watch list. Right. And I want to clarify everything I was talking about before. That's just watch list.
What's your trigger point? Mine is under 20K.
No, I don't really have a price, because I try to look at sentiment. Okay. So, but one thing that does make me more bullish on Bitcoin than I was like a month ago is the fact that you have had an epic amount of bad news come out in the crypto space. I mean, you've had Coinbase, I think, weren't they being investigated? Insider trading. You've got 3 Arrows. You've got Celsius. You've got all these things that should absolutely tank Bitcoin. And it did come down to like the 17 handle for a minute there, but then it traded right back up and it's hovered right around 20,000. And every single time more bad news comes out, it goes down a little bit, but then it just kind of recovers. And that usually in markets is a sign.
It's almost 24K right now.
That's usually a sign in markets where the asset is bottoming out.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying buy it. I'm not saying this is a bottom. I'm just saying usually market dynamics, that's the way it plays out when it's going to move up. Now, well, that's 6 months a year, a month, who knows?
Yeah.
But that's something I think people should pay attention to.
I would wait until the end of August to see how Mount Gox ends up playing out. So there's a huge amount of BTC that's going to go into the open market. So it was a big hack that happened about 8 years ago. It was during a time when that Mount Gox was the only exchange for Bitcoin in Japan, for all of the world.
Mm-hmm.
And then they got hacked. They only recovered 60% of the money. And then the Japanese government has been holding on to that BTC for 8 years. And now they're finally starting to they're going to start giving distributions at the end of August.
What are the probabilities that Tether turns into Terra Luna?
I mean, pretty high chance. I think
because that would be kind of a bearish. We talked about kind of a bullish reason, but I think that's maybe a reason to hit the pause button and keep it on the watch list. But again, it's people have to make their own decisions.
Right. I mean, that's why I've been watching. I've been watching like a hawk USDC. Because USDC is basically it's FedCoin. I mean, it's BlackRock, it's JP Morgan, it's Coinbase. I mean, it's all one thing. It's Circle, right? What they're trying to do right now is put USDC. So if you look at USDC versus Tether from a year ago, USDC has grown 8 times faster than Tether. Tether's only gotten $5 billion more in market cap,
right?
While USDC has gained $40 billion,
right?
In 1 year, and that's May 2nd to now,
right?
And what I'm looking at is basically USDC is. I'm watching when USDC finally goes to number 1 as the biggest stablecoin, and I think that's when they're going to start going after Tether. So I'm watching that like a hawk right now. It's only like it's a little under 10 billion.
Because Tether provides a lot of liquidity for Bitcoin, doesn't it?
Yeah, a lot of mostly kind of like Asian and like Asian Euro markets.
Okay.
Basically.
Okay.
Yeah. In the United States market, we're all USDC.
Yeah. Just for people who don't follow crypto too much, and that's just if Tether were to go down, theoretically, you would see Bitcoin take a big hit.
Okay.
And so that's kind of a tail risk that you have to juxtapose against kind of that bullish argument that I gave earlier.
Okay. And I know some of you guys probably are wondering, well, because I've gotten a bunch of people saying, "Oh, is the housing market going to crash?" Whatever. And Justin, I'd like to get your point on this as well. With the recession and everything, I would argue no, because we're about 5.5 million homes short. With the starter homes, right? Especially, and the thing, there's a housing shortage, guys. So for the market to crash, you would need essentially, oversupply, which we obviously have an undersupply. So my thing is right now, I think this is a good time to get into real estate, especially if you're going to get into, single family homes, starter homes, even duplexes, triplexes, because as the interest rates go up, people won't be able to afford as much home. If they can't afford as much home, they're not getting approved for loans. What's going to happen is they're going to have to go back to renting. And for you as a landlord, that's good for you because you're going to be able to collect rent and even in some cases increase the rent. Like Miami, for example, right? Depending on the market that you're in as well, you need to be in a market that it has a demand. Right here in South Florida, Florida in general has a huge demand thanks to all these New Yorkers, and it lets you, the rent went up 40% in the Miami area alone. So yes, it is a little bit more expensive to get into and buy a property here, but you're going to enjoy good appreciation. And then on top of that, with the cash flow thing, because who gives a fuck about appreciation, honestly? You should be buying for cash flow, not for appreciation. You're able to raise the rents significantly.
Also as well, occupancy. That's never going to go down.
Right? Yeah, it's not going to go down right now.
So,
with the starter homes, I think there's a caveat there with the starter homes because you've got to remember that if people can't afford a mortgage, therefore they have to rent, that is still a derivative of income. So if we have negative real wages, right? We talked about that at the beginning. That means your purchasing power is going down. That means your purchasing power to pay for rent is going down. Just because you can't afford a house doesn't mean you can afford rent.
Right.
Right. So my point there is that it's better to be at the bottom of the economic totem pole as far as a landlord And I'm not saying to go into a C neighborhood or
That's a good point.
go into a rough area.
But B's.
I'm saying B's.
Yeah,
you know, you want that starter home, that small 1,000, 1,500 square foot, 3-bed, 2-bath.
Yeah.
Because if we go into an economic recession, if people can't afford mortgages, they're not going to be able to afford rent either.
And that's a good point.
But they're going to move down.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that person that could afford $3,000 a month, well, now they're tightening their belt, but they can still afford 1,800.
Exactly.
Right. Where if you're at the high end of the market, you know, at the $4,000 a month, $5,000 a month, well, you could be high and dry to where you have no renters because the recession has had such a significant impact and the unemployment rate goes up to, let's say, 15%.
Thank you for mentioning that. That's actually a fantastic point for everybody out there that wants to get in real estate. Like, you want to invest somewhere where you're not at the top of the market. And we talked about this with Ken McElroy. Like, his thing, which I think is genius, he looks at school districts.
Yeah.
So he uses school districts to dictate where he's going to buy his properties. And if you're in a good school district and you're in that, BC area, you're not A, luxury, stay away from luxury, which I tell guys all the time. Do not buy a fucking condo in Brickell. I don't know why people still do this. They buy, condominiums in really high, ritzy luxury areas. Don't do that shit. You want to be buying, if you're going to buy duplexes, triplexes, single family homes, I agree. BC, good school district. That way you'll have, tenants that aren't necessarily the richest, or they can afford more, but they want to tighten the belt, as you would say.
Yeah. So
still be in a good, safe area with good schools.
But the good news is if we do go through a housing crash, and first of all, I don't like that word because the housing market doesn't crash.
Yeah.
It goes down very slowly.
Yeah.
Let's go back to the GFC, and I think the housing market could go down in nominal terms.
Yeah.
But it's very unlikely you have a housing crisis like we had, because
like in
if you
2008.
go through 100-year spans in economic history, it's very rare that you have the exact same black swan event happen within 20 years, right?
Yeah.
But my point there is, even during the GFC, the market went down from 2006 to 2012. It took 6 years to bottom out.
Yeah.
Well, what that means is, yes, if you're a prudent and real estate investor, you could be lowering your equity.
Yeah.
Yes, you could, but that also means that you're going to have more buying opportunities.
Yeah.
You see, so as long as you're prepared, and that's what Kenny did. Sure, he lost some money as far as just paper gains in his portfolio when the GFC happened, but he had so much dry powder and he had the relationships with the bank that he could go in and buy all of these apartment units on the cheap. 50 cents on the dollar.
Yeah.
So then when we do come into another upswing,
Bam.
then he's going out and buying his private jet.
One advantage that I think Kenny has that people don't actually realize is that he is so fucking big that he can get debt that you cannot.
Oh, and at a way cheaper rate.
Right.
At a way
That's
lower
true.
rate.
And that's the point, because the bank doesn't want your property back. They want you to succeed. So when you're Ken fucking McElroy, the bank is like, listen, Ken, we'll talk.
That's an interesting topic, because I know there's probably people in the chat right now going, I'm
think
not
we
a
got all the ladies
millionaire.
in
I don't have anything like I'm probably sitting at this table right now. I can assure you, I am in no way in your tax bracket of anybody on this table. So it's like, how does that apply to me as like a guy? I mean, I make a good chunk of change, don't get me wrong, but like, how does that apply to the guy who's just maybe making $100,000 a year? So what I like what you said about, like, cater to your own market right now. I live in Northern Nevada. So land out there, if you can't build houses, like you said, there's a glut right now. If you can't build houses on those things in the first place. So what investors are doing right now is they're going and they're putting money into new developments so they can get those houses and they can rent those houses when, so
I said it for a while. Nevada's the new frontier, man. Right. It's going to be huge soon.
Idaho, South Dakota, and
Vegas.
Nevada.
Shout out Aaron Clary.
There's a lot of land. So what I would say is, I have to be smart, I have to be clever, and I have to be like one sneaky motherfucker. And so what it is like, I got to find where those land spots are with school districts and everything else. Because if I own that land, when those guys want to come in there and put that new development in there, I'm already sitting on top of it.
Bam.
And I can do that because I can afford that, just a plot of land, right? And wait till they're and wait them out, because I know that that's where they're going to go next. Just watch where those things are going to be. If it comes up for sale, if it's a reasonable price, sit on top of that, and then also it's good debt. So if it ends up becoming
another
Nevada
city council
is going to be California's
Escape haven.
Escape
Release
haven,
valve.
just like Florida, it was New Yorker's escape haven. It's New York's escape haven. Nevada's going to be California's escape haven.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
already has become that
Yeah.
way. I
Yeah.
was gonna say is like, so if you're not in the same tax bracket as everybody, and like I certainly am not here, but there are still ways. Which, by the way, I learned from Tom Wheelwright all this stuff, right? You know how to buy, you know, what is it, tax-free wealth.
That's a great book,
Yeah,
man.
but get that
Yeah.
book, and you will understand why
Unreal.
it is that I'm looking at land and commodities as well. That's why I asked you about which commodities. There are still ways you can prepare, even if you're not like in,
Super
you know,
wealthy.
super wealthy, you're multi-millionaire.
But it's just the concepts. It's understanding
Yes.
the concepts, and then you can
Fundamentals.
apply them to your own portfolio.
Yeah.
And I think one other secret that Kenny had that really was profound to me is he said what he tries to do is go in and buy a place where there's as big of a delta as possible between your rent and what the average
A house.
mortgage payment
Yeah.
would be.
Ah.
So he tries
Yeah.
to buy an apartment complex. As an example, he would try to buy a nice B apartment complex that's very close to a neighborhood with multi-million-dollar homes.
Yeah.
Because what he does is he knows the people
They'd buy a
want to
house.
be in that school district
Yes.
because that's where all the $1 million homes are.
Yeah.
And therefore the school district's most likely going to be a lot better, but they can't afford the $1 million home. So they're just going to rent an apartment in Kenny's unit. And if they go into a recession, all those people in the $1 million homes are going to now want to rent from Kenny's apartment complex because they don't want to take their kids out of that school district.
Bam.
So it makes his
Damn.
renters even more sticky.
Yeah.
And there's
Yeah.
something that Justin taught me. This was last year when you were in Tahoe with me. Is buying the land is one thing, and in the hopes that somebody's going to want to, develop that land. There's another thing is that, like, you'll notice this when those developments go up, you'll also see storage facilities come up like right around them because all these people got so much shit that they can't put it into those homes because they're renting those homes. So like, I need storage as well. So you will always see those storage facilities pop up as well. If you can't afford to buy a full apartment unit, you can certainly put some money into a collective or something so that you can get into the
Storage facilities is like kind of like a real estate hack, man.
Mhm.
Like
Yeah.
a lot of guys that are in the commercial world of real estate investing get
And
those
that is
storage
something
units. And,
I can do.
yeah, that's
Yeah, one
That's a whole other
one
thing.
hack that I'd give to your audience that I've discussed with some of my one of my good buddies. His son
Yeah.
was asking me about kind of business ideas. He's very entrepreneurial, like 22 years old,
nice.
and he wants to get involved with real estate. And he's saved up, believe it or not, like $100,000.
Oh, nice.
He's an electrician. He's got a great job.
Good.
But anyway, I said, you know what you should do is do Turo or Turo.
Turo.
Is it Turo?
For
Yeah,
cars?
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I said, do Turo because basically what you're doing is you're buying an asset to rent it out.
Yeah.
So you're going to have to deal with renters. You're going to have to deal with maintenance. You're going to have to deal with the exact same issues that you would in real estate, but at a fraction of the price. And if we go through a recession, you can go ahead and liquidate your inventory and go to cash almost immediately. So go out there, let's say you're someone watching right now that has maybe saved up 15,000 or 20,000. Go out and buy a couple minis or, just go on Turo
Yeah.
and find out what's very popular in your
Jeep
area.
Wranglers tend to be. We did an episode on this. Jeep
Yeah,
Wranglers,
with
Mercedes
the
C
Trump logo.
class.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, do that.
Those
And
are
not
popular
only is
cars.
that a great little side hustle, but it's going to teach you almost everything you need to know to get involved with real estate.
Yeah.
So when you do, you'll reduce your learning curve and there'll be a far lower probability that you'll lose money.
You know,
Good point.
one more thing that I would add to what we've been talking about is I think it's very important when you look at a market to pay attention to what the GDP of that market is.
Yep.
So you can align your money and your investment with a place where people that are your tenants are going to have jobs in a down recession.
Right.
So a bunch of people around here, they're paying rent with crypto or whatever the fuck they're doing. I don't know, seriously.
No, you're right. In
But-
Miami,
yeah.
they make
but
money in
yeah.
strange ways. Yes.
Yeah, so
Yeah, right.
it's a little bit of a,
OnlyFans.
yeah, it's a little bit of a scary thing because you have to think that the waiter that's going to wait on us tonight at dinner can't actually live in Brickell.
Yeah.
Right.
She has to drive outside of Brickell.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Good point.
basically, you're long
Yeah.
crypto. So
I mean,
you don't, but you see what I'm saying there. What you're saying is, if you're going to buy real estate, buy real estate by going long real estate. Don't buy real estate that's going long crypto.
Right.
Because now you've got you're trying to buy a safe asset, but you're doing it in a way that's highly volatile.
Yeah.
So buy real estate in a market like Nashville,
Right.
or
Or
somewhere
anywhere in
where
the
they've
South.
got like FedEx, or
Yeah.
I'm
Steady
guessing,
Eddie
or
markets.
Arkansas,
Yeah.
where they've got
Yeah.
Walmart.
I
or
always
something like
say
that, you know?
buying in the Southeastern Conference, like anybody that watches football.
Mhm.
No, but seriously, but think about it.
That's great advice.
But think about it. But think about it,
That's great
because
advice,
these people, these blue collar people that actually get up and go to work every day, are in South Louisiana. The mouth of Mississippi's right there. So there's all these plants and all these things that do pellets, that go in fertilizer, that make the world go round. That shit is not going to stop.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Regardless of what the recession does, it's going to continue to go. So I believe that when you're looking at a market, or you're looking at a sub-market or a neighborhood or whatever it is, and I promise you, in due diligence, Ken goes through and looks at every application to find out what every one of those people do for a living.
I'll give you an example of that too. Is like my niece actually lives with us. Shout out to Grace right now. Okay, she comes to me. She says, "I want to buy property. I want to I want to buy a house in Reno, Nevada."
You talking about my girlfriend?
Yeah, you're a real man. But when we started looking at the average income or the average home price of the Reno Sparks area, we're looking at you're looking at close to like $550,000-$600,000 for the average, family, family home, right? And I'm like, is this something you think that you can afford? And she's like, well, absolutely not. So we have to look in other areas. I said, while we're doing this, let's also look at what is the median income in Reno, Nevada, right? So we look at that, and it's like somewhere like $47,000 a year. I said, now that you know that, do you think that the people who are living in those homes actually own those homes? No, they don't, because they're working in the casinos and they're renting those homes because they're being bought. The reason why those things are so bloody expensive right now is because they're not being bought by people who actually live in Reno. They're being bought by people in like Silicon Valley as insurance, or,
boys.
Yeah, exactly. So what is, as you said, what's the demographic? What's the GDP of that particular area? What is the major economy? Well, it's clearly in Nevada, it's gambling and tourism. So you look at those things, you say, how can I position myself for what is really actually going on in that particular area? And so it was interesting, because it was like kind of like, classes in session kind of thing. And we're just doing simple math, right? Like, how do you think that people who live here actually can afford to buy a house here?
That's a good point.
Right.
Good point.
They can't. And the truth is, you can't.
All right, guys. So we got another show coming up as well with some girls. So we got some more chats here, right?
I'll read these chats real quick, and then we'll go ahead and give us about what time you think we'll start the second show, Chris?
10:30.
10:30. All right, cool. All right, so we got here. Josh Smith, $50 goes, GOAT panel. I found Rolo way back in late 2012 when I found his blog after feeling lost with dealing with women dating in San Francisco. Took me years to fully internalize the RP. It was bitter as hell at first. Thank you. Hey, man, that's what
Thank you.
Rolo saving lives as always. You found it. That's what matters. And then we got here, gentlemen, excellent wisdom here. Thank you. Fit, please check your DMs on IG. This is from Major Raw Dog. Okay. My pitch deck is waiting. It's legit crypto play. We're talking to Q Coin Labs this coming week. Worth a few minutes of your time, sirs. Sorry, bro. We're not really doing any crypto projects unless it's with the Cultivate Crypto gang and Dollar Cost Crypto. Those are only crypto guys that we deal with. Anything else?
By the way.
Oh, and thank you, Wayne, for 20 gifted subs
Shout
on
to
YouTube,
Wayne,
my
man.
friend. Appreciate that, Wayne.
Shout to you, Wayne.
For people to become members. But yeah, guys, at this point, we're probably not going to do any other cryptocurrency or metaverse ventures with anyone unless it's Miguel or Charlie at this point, man, because we're not educated enough on it. We're willing to admit that shit. They're the experts, so we go off of them. And
and sorry if you missed the course, because that's gonna be fire, man.
Yeah, seriously. All right, guys. So other than that, man, we got some lovely ladies in the house. We'll be back here in about 30 minutes. Hope you guys enjoyed that show. Make sure you guys took notes, man. There was a lot of game that was dropped here, man.
Yep.
So we'll catch you guys back here in about 30. Peace.